Chapter 117. Seeing Qin Feiyang's calm face, the black-robed old man was quite surprised. There were still people in this world who were not afraid of death. He took a step forward and instantly arrived in front of Qin Feiyang as if he had teleported. The two were almost face to face, but Qin Feiyang did not have the slightest timidity, nor did he take half a step back. He looked straight into the eyes of the black-robed old man and said, "What do you want to do? Don't play with these empty words." The black-robed old man was stunned. This kid was really not afraid. Swish! He retreated to the side of the alchemy fire and grinned. "You are quite interesting, but you still have to die. Do you know why I am hiding here?" "Why?" Qin Feiyang frowned. The black-robed old man said, "Have you heard of the blood fiend pill?" "What? Blood fiend pill?" Qin Feiyang and the other two were shocked. The blood fiend pill had an amazing effect, which was to increase one's cultivation. Although it couldn't be like the scarlet glass pill, which could suddenly skyrocket a small realm. As long as there were enough blood fiend pills, the cultivation speed would be many times faster than others. Refining the blood fiend pill required two necessary materials. However, these two materials were truly outrageous, because the materials were human blood and flesh. Moreover, the flesh and blood of mortals was not enough, nor was the flesh and blood of beasts. It must be the flesh and blood of martial artists. Therefore, a long time ago, the first emperor of the great Qin Empire had already ordered to destroy the pill recipe, and no alchemist was allowed to refine the blood fiend pill. Once found, 9 generations would be killed. Who dared to disobey the power of the emperor? Since then, the pill recipe of the blood fiend pill had been lost. Even the blood fiend pill was slowly forgotten. But later, some alchemists found the pill recipe of the blood fiend pill and tried to refine it. After all, there were many people with evil intentions. When the first emperor ordered to destroy it, some people secretly kept it. But without exception, once they were found, they were chased by everyone in the world. And in the end, they did not have a good ending. Even their relatives were all implicated and died, tragically, one by one. The lesson of blood made those alchemists with evil intentions no longer dare to have evil thoughts. Could it be that this person was hiding here to refine the blood fiend pill? Jijia, I need at most 10,000 blood spirit pills, and I will be able to step into the 9-star combat emperor realm. When that time comes, no one in the entire county of Yan will be my match. At that time, the first person I want to kill will be the 4 old dogs of King Yan to take revenge for what happened back then. Ha! The black-robed old man laughed wildly. The terrifying aura around his body pressed down on the 3 of them to the point of suffocation. 9-star combat emperor. In other words, he is now an 8-star combat emperor. Feng Ling Heir and Feng Ling Heir were shocked. Not only was he powerful, but he also said that he wanted to kill the king of Yan. Who exactly was this person? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. An 8-star combat emperor was far beyond his expectations. He couldn't help but wonder if the castle could protect him. I've thought about it. 8 years ago, there was an alchemist named Zhuan. He was killed by the royal family, the Danwang Hall, the Martial Imperial Palace, and the Precious Treasure Pavilion for refining the blood demon pill. Could it be that you're Zhuan's disciple or family member? Lin Chen asked in surprise. Zhuan. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Hee, I didn't expect a junior to remember me. It seems like I was quite famous back then. That's right. I am Zhuan. The black-robed old man said. Between his eyebrows, there was less ferocity and more arrogance. Lin Chen's body trembled, and he said firmly, "Impossible. Many people saw you die 8 years ago. I was also watching from the city wall. Although I was still young at that time, I'm sure I saw it clearly." Ha! Everyone thought that I was dead. However, they didn't know that I was lucky enough to escape death back then. At that time, I wanted to leave the county of Yen, but I was unwilling to do so. I didn't complain when they killed me. After all, I made a big mistake. However, why did they kill my family? I wanted to take revenge. Therefore, I decided to stay in the county of Yen and continue to refine the blood demon pill. 8 years have passed, and I've broken through from a 6-star combat emperor to an 8-star combat emperor. Revenge is just around the corner. Xuan bellowed. He was like a demon king, making people shudder in fear. What? In just 8 years, you've broken through 2 small realms. Lin Qin and Feng Ling Er's scalp tingled. How many people had died in the hands of this demon king in the past 8 years? Qin Feiyong frowned. He looked at Lin Qin and asked, Xuan, refining the blood demon pill is such a big matter. Why didn't you report it to the imperial capital? 8 years ago, he was still in the imperial capital and had never heard of it. Lin Qin said, I heard from the head of the family that King Yen and the others did not report it because Xuan was already dead. After all, they would be punished if such a thing happened in the county of Yen. As soon as he finished speaking, he frowned and said in surprise, No, how do you know that King Yen and the others did not report it? Yes, how did you know? Feng Ling'er was stunned and looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. Xuan also looked at Qin Feiyong. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he said in horror, Are you from the imperial capital? I'm from the imperial capital. Feng Linger and Li Chia were also dumbfounded. Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. He scolded himself for being stupid. Why did he ask such a stupid question? How was he going to justify himself now? Why don't I just beat him at his own game? When he saw Xuan's frightened expression, he raised his head and puffed out his chest. He took a step forward and nodded. That's right, I'm from the imperial capital. When he nodded, the 3 of them were shocked. Seeing this, Qin Feiyong followed up with another attack. He took another step forward. His long hair fluttered in the wind. He looked insufferably arrogant and said, I'm not only from the imperial capital, I'm also the prince of the great Qin Empire. There was a great deterrent force in his words. At the same time, his temperament changed drastically. Originally, he had a bookish aura and gave people a sense of weakness. But now, he exuded the aura of an emperor from head to toe. In fact, this was his essence. Born in the royal family, he had cultivated the aura of an emperor. Even the dukes of the empire would be affected by it, let alone the 3 people in front of him. But this aura of an emperor was restrained after he was expelled from the imperial capital. Prince Xuan and Feng Ling'er trembled both physically and mentally. The word prince kept echoing in their minds. In fact, they did not believe it. How could a prince be in the county of Yen? But the aura of an emperor was too real and too strong. They could not help but believe it. Qin Feiyong took another step forward. When he was only 3 meters away from Xuan, he shouted, Xuan, you killed innocent people to refine the blood pill. How should you be punished? Xuan's stooped body trembled. He hurriedly said, At this moment, Qin Feiyong used the shifting smoke steps and rushed to Xuan's side. He grabbed the black alchemy fire and disappeared without a trace. Of course, he went to the ancient castle. He was gambling. If the ancient castle was powerful enough to save his life, then he would get the alchemy fire. But if the ancient castle could not save him, then he could only accept his fate. As soon as the alchemy fire disappeared, the black smoke surged and drowned the bottom in an instant. Damned little bastard, get the hell out here for me. In the black smoke, Xuan was stunned at first. Then he roared and his aura soared. Under the impact of the aura, the black smoke quickly rose into the air. His face was ferocious, and his eyes were emitting a gloomy green light. He looked like a man-eating demon. It was terrifying. Feng Ling'er and Xuan regained their senses. They were forced to retreat by the aura. They kept vomiting blood, and their faces were as pale as paper. Little bastard, don't think that you will be fine if you hide. The nether demonic flame has recognized me as its master. I can revive the nether demonic flame with just a thought. It will release a terrifying heat and burn you to ashes. Zwan grinned, but in the next moment, his face changed and he exclaimed, "How is this possible?" He was shocked to find that he had lost contact with the nether demonic flame. He could not even sense where the nether demonic flame was, let alone revive it. It was as if something was blocking him from the nether demonic flame. How can this be? It's impossible. It must be an illusion. Yes, it's an illusion. I will wake up soon. He mumbled in disbelief as he frantically slapped his face, making loud, slapping sounds. In the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Zhuo An's voice. Then, he glanced at the ancient castle and muttered to himself, "Even an 8-star combat emperor can't sense the existence of the ancient castle. Uncle Yuan, is this ancient castle that you left me a sacred object?" Outside, Feng Lingair saw that Zhuo An had completely ignored her and Lin Qin. She said in a low voice, "Let's take this opportunity to slip away." Lin Qin nodded. The two of them retreated silently, but when they reached the stone wall and were about to climb up, Zhuo An suddenly raised his head and stared at them coldly. The two of them froze and couldn't move. Zhuo An walked towards them step by step and said in a gloomy voice, "Ask that little bastard to come out and hand over the nether demonic flame. Then I will spare your lives." Feng Lingair turned around and shook her head. "I don't know him well. Besides, I don't know where he is now." Lin Chen quickly echoed, "That's right. We have only known him for a few days. We don't know anything about him. Master Zhuo, please be magnanimous and let us go." "Let you go?" Zhuo An laughed sinisterly. His voice was like the howling of an owl. Suddenly, he stopped and looked at Lin Qin. "Are you from Yen City?" Yes. I am from Yen City's Lin family." Lin Qin nodded. Zhuo An's eyes flashed and said, "I remember that the old ancestor of your Lin family was among the people who besieged me outside Yen City 8 years ago. Is he doing well?" Lin Chen smiled. "The old ancestor's doing well. Thank you for your concern." But his smile was unnatural. It was uglier than crying. Zhuo An laughed sinisterly. "If that's the case, I should take good care of you. You are also an alchemist, right? If you agree to be my disciple, I will spare your life." Lin Chen's expression changed, and he quickly said, "Thank you for your concern. But I am already a disciple of the Pill Hall. Moreover, I am not qualified to be your disciple. You should find someone else." Zhuo An tempted. "If I say that as long as you agree, not only will I give you the Blood Evil Palace, I will also give you the little beauty beside you. Will you agree?" Lin Chen's eyes lit up when he heard this. Qin Feiyang, who was hiding in the ancient castle, frowned. Chapter 118. Qin Feiyang had seen a lot of combat emperors before. Normally, it would take a genius 5 to 6 years to advance a small realm. It was normal for it to take 10 to 20 years. But Zhuo An only used 8 years to advance 2 small realms. This showed how useful the blood spirit pill was. At the same time, Feng Lingair was also the woman that Lin Qin wanted the most. Would Lin Qin be able to resist these 2 temptations? If he couldn't, should he save Feng Lingair? Lin Qin was struggling in his heart. Just as Qin Feiyang thought, the double temptation was very tempting. Feng Lingair furrowed her brows as she coldly snorted. "Lin Qin, don't forget that you are a member of Swallow City's Lin clan, as well as a core disciple of the Pill Emperor Hall. Don't be blinded by greed and betray your dignity." Lin Chen's body shook. Zhuo An said, "Lin Qin, you have to understand that you can only live if you agree to be my disciple." Lin Qin was struggling again. "At most, I'll die. 20 years later, I'll be a man again. What are you afraid of?" Feng Lingair shouted, "No, I still have a lot of youth. I haven't lived long enough. I don't want to die. Lin Chen kept shaking his head. His heart was in a panic and his faith was wavering. I don't want to die either, but I must have a backbone. And don't forget, not only will the person who made the blood spirit pill be executed, but the person who took the pill will also be despised and hunted down by the world. Wake up! Don't be so obsessed! Feng Ling Er shouted in exasperation. Lin Chen, don't worry. With my current strength, I can dominate the county of Yan. Who dares to touch you? I promise you, when I become a 9-star combat emperor, it will be the day when you become a 9-star combat emperor. Zhuo threw out another bait. Lin Chen's faith was completely crushed. He knelt on the ground and said respectfully, Disciple Lin Chen greets master. Lin Chen, you're just a spineless wretch. Feng Ling Er was furious. If I wasn't a wretched wretch, would I have pestered you all day long? But what about you? Have you ever been touched? Telling me to come and go as you wish? What do you take me for? A dog? Even a dog has its own pride. Lin Chen roared. His usual smile disappeared, and his face was incomparably ferocious. Feng Ling Er sneered, So this is your true face. You're right, I'm a hypocrite. Lin Chen sneered and turned his head to look at Zhuo. There was a trace of madness in his eyes as he said, Master, this disciple wants to have her now and humiliate her. Please grant me my wish. Ha ha! I didn't expect you to have the same nature as me. I like it. All right, I'll fulfill your wish now. Zhuo laughed out loud. He took a step towards Feng Ling Er. Don't even think about it. Feng Ling Er shouted angrily. She took out a dagger and immediately slit her neck. Do you think it's possible to kill yourself in front of me? Zhuo snorted and landed in front of Feng Ling Er in an instant. He waved his old hand and slapped away the dagger in Feng Ling Er's hand. Feng Ling Er bit her tongue to commit suicide, but Zhuo was faster. He slapped the back of her head and she fainted on the spot. She fell on the white bones. Lin Chen quickly bent down and reached out to take off Feng Ling Er's mask. A peerless face immediately appeared in front of him. Looking at those full red lips, Lin Chen's lust was immediately aroused. Zhuo scanned the surroundings. The reason why he did this was not because he valued Lin Chen. He just wanted to nurture Lin Chen to be a sharp blade in his hand. For someone like him who had a perverted mentality, it was very satisfying to have the descendant of his enemy serve him. Moreover, he had a decent talent. But there was another main reason. He suspected that Qin Feiyang was hiding nearby. Moreover, he could also see that the relationship between Qin Feiyang and Feng Ling Er was very complicated. So he wanted to use this method to force Qin Feiyang out. Master, this. Lin Chen turned to look at Zhuo and said hesitantly, Can you leave us for a while? He added, By the way, Master, there are 6 people outside. You can capture them and use them to threaten Jiang Haoyan. There are more? Zhuo frowned and asked, Are they close to that little bastard? Lin Chen sneered and said, There is a person called Ling Yunfei and Fatso. They are very close to him. Great. Zhuo was wild with joy. He thought that the little bastard had not come out until now. He might have used some treasure to escape. At this thought, he said to Lin Chen, Master will not disturb you. Have fun. After that, he soared into the air and flew upwards. Along with him was the thick black smoke. 8-star were emperor. With this backer, who will I be afraid of in the future? Smelly bitch, you didn't expect that you would fall into my hands today, did you? Hee, now I'll take off your clothes and admire it. Lin Chen laughed lewdly as his hands reached for Feng Ling Er's belt. But at this moment, Qin Feiyang suddenly appeared out of thin air, holding the changshui in his hand, and pounced on Lin Chen. Lin Chen raised his head and his expression changed. He hurriedly tilted his head and dodged. Little bastard, you're courting death. Following closely, He sneered and sent a palm strike towards Qin Feiyang's head. A hair's breadth. Qin Feiyang grabbed Feng Ling Heir's clothes. With a thought, the two of them disappeared without a trace. Where is he? Lin Shan was startled. His face immediately became incomparably ferocious, and he roared, Jiang Haotian, if you have the guts, come out and fight me fair and square. Whoever wins, Feng Ling Heir will be his. Do you dare? Inside the ancient castle, the nether devil flame floated in the air. The black flames kept flickering, looking incomparably demonic. But now it was no longer releasing black smoke. Qin Feiyang placed Feng Ling Heir flat on the ground. Although this woman sometimes made him very angry, he was entrusted by others to do his job. If he did not save her, his conscience would not be able to get over it. As for Lin Chen's provocation, he directly ignored it. Women were not objects. If he truly loved her, he did not have to possess her, but to see her happy. As for deciding victory or defeat in a single battle, it was simply disrespectful to women. No matter what others thought, he, Qin Feiyang, would never use a woman as a bet. As the Wolf King walked around Feng Linger, he seriously commented on her appearance. This supple and tender skin, this beautiful little face. What a hot body! She is indeed a top-grade little beauty. No wonder she usually wears a mask. With this figure, this appearance, who wouldn't have a bad idea? Little Qin Zi, are you also a little tempted? Listen to Brother Wolf. It's better to act than to be tempted. A great opportunity is in front of you. Just strip her naked 100 times, 100 times. How cool is that, right? Wolf King stopped and looked at Qin Feiyang sneakily, egging him on. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He looked at him strangely and asked, Who taught you this? Brother Wolf is talented and intelligent. Do you need others to teach you? Wolf King gave him a disdainful look. All right, stop talking nonsense. Let's think of a way to escape. We can't be trapped here forever. There's also Ling Yunfei and the others. It would be even more troublesome if they were caught. Qin Feiyang looked worried. Wolf King's eyes darkened. He stopped playing at this critical moment and turned to He Lang and growled a few times. He pondered for a while. He Lang growled a few times in response. Wolf King said in a deep voice, He Lang said that the strongest fierce beast within a few 100 miles is that falcon. It seems that there is no way to ask for help. Ask for help? Qin Feiyang laughed at himself and shook his head. Forget it. Zuan is an 8-star combat emperor. Except for Uncle Yuan, no one can help. But we don't know where Uncle Yuan is. Now we can only wake this woman up and ask her if she has any ideas. But once she wakes up, she will know this place. The most important problem is that once she sees me, she may guess your true identity. Wolf King was a little worried. If she knows, then she knows. Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly. He grabbed Feng Ling Heir's jade-like hand and pinched her thumb and index finger. Feng Ling Heir murmured and slowly opened her eyes. Pervert, I'm going to kill you. Suddenly, with a stern shout, she kicked Qin Feiyang with her leg. Qin Feiyang did not expect this to happen. Bang! Unfortunately, he was kicked by Feng Ling Heir and hit the stone wall behind him. He saw stars and spat out a mouthful of blood. Crazy woman, what are you doing? The Wolf King ran in front of Feng Ling. Blood spurting out of its mouth, and its eyes were filled with a ferocious light. Feng Ling Heir was stunned. She quickly looked around, and a trace of doubt appeared in her eyes. 2 wolves? Qin Feiyang? Secret chamber? Where is this? Qin Feiyang got up from the ground and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He said in a deep voice, Good people don't have good karma. I shouldn't have saved you. You saved me? Feng Ling Heir was stunned again. She quickly got up and rubbed the back of her head. She was lost in her memories. Qin Feiyang said, Don't think about it. We're still in the Eagle Claw Peak. Lin Chin has betrayed all of us. I think Ling Yunfei and the others have been captured by Zhua and this damned bastard. I'll skin him alive. Fenglinger was furious and asked in a fluster, Then did he? You only think of asking this now? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. What a careless woman. He shook his head and said, Don't worry, he didn't even touch your finger. That's good. Otherwise, I will be disgusted for the rest of my life. Fenglinger breathed a sigh of relief. Do you have the confidence to get rid of him in an instant? Qin Feiyang asked. Fenglinger shook her head and said solemnly, Although his character is not good, his extraordinary talent is one of the best in the whole Yen city. Qin Feiyang impatiently said, Stop. You can just tell me what his cultivation is. Fenglinger said, Same as me, a 2-star martial arts grandmaster. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and took out the Chang Shui without hesitation. He said in a deep voice, Take it, I guarantee that your strength will double. Fenglinger did not take it. Instead, she looked at it with disdain. Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that this was a dagger that was only for ornamental purposes. Double one's strength? What a daydream. Chapter 119. Qin Feiyang glared and said angrily, There's no time to dawdle. Hurry up. Oh. Fenglinger instinctively responded and reached out to grab Chang Shui. She only reacted after grabbing Chang Shui. This bastard actually dared to be fierce to her? Moreover, in that moment she was actually afraid. Seeing that this woman was about to flip out, Qin Feiyang grabbed her arm and appeared outside in the blink of an eye. Fenglinger was surprised. Wasn't this too magical? Little bastard, die. Lin Qin had been observing the surroundings. When he saw the two of them appear, he immediately pounced towards Qin Feiyang. Fenglinger's face turned cold and shouted, Lin Qin, I'll give you another chance. If you escape with us now, I'll let bygones be bygones. Women are so long-winded. Qin Feiyang muttered and quickly took a step back. Lin Qin also turned a deaf ear and continued to pounce towards Qin Feiyang. His face was extremely ferocious. Stubborn. Barbarian elephant fist. Fenglinger shouted explosively as she took a step to stand before Qin Feiyang, and then she stretched out her fair hand and clenched her fingers tightly before suddenly smashing out with her fist. It actually faintly carried the roar of a barbaric elephant. Barbarian elephant fist was also a perfect martial arts technique. You pair of dogs, don't even think about leaving today. Return to origin palm. Lin Qin gritted his teeth and slapped towards Fenglinger with an astonishing palm wind. Thump! The fist and palm collided, and a violent wind suddenly rose. Both of their bodies shook and they retreated continuously. The white bones under their feet were accompanied by cracking sounds as they continued to shatter. Return to origin palm is also a perfect martial arts technique. It seems that the strength of the two is really similar. Qin Feiyang muttered. Back in Iron Ox Town, Lin Bai Li had also used the return to origin palm. Therefore, he more or less understood. Stinking bitch, do you have to go against me? Lin Qin roared. Clang! With a wave of his hand, a 3-chi-long sword appeared in the air, gleaming with a frightening sharpness. If I can't have a woman, no one else can either. Die! His face was gloomy as he grabbed the sword in his hand. His genuine chi surged, and the sword shone brightly. Accompanied by a sharp whistle, he slashed at Fenglinger. Autumn Light Sword. Fenglinger was shocked. She had seen this sword more than once. Its sharp blade was enough to tear apart any martial arts grandmaster's defense. The reason why Lin Qin was able to become one of the best in Swallow City's younger generation was not only because he was an alchemist, it was also because of the Autumn Light Sword in his hand. Countless powerful enemies had been defeated by this sword. The Autumn Light Sword slashed down furiously with a bone-piercing sharpness. She hurriedly brandished the Chang Shui. Clang! As sparks flew everywhere, the autumn light sword that made her feel uneasy was instantly cut in half by Chang Shui. How is this possible? Lin Chin was stunned on the spot. He was dumbfounded. Feng Ling Er was also stunned. She then looked at the broken sword in Lin Chen's hand. Her heart was filled with disbelief. It was actually broken. This dagger was actually not an ornamental item. It could even break the autumn light sword. Such sharpness was unheard of. In an instant, she was full of confidence. While Lin Chen was in a daze, she took a step forward and stabbed the dagger into Lin Chen's right chest. Puff! Immediately, blood spurted out like a fountain. Lin Chen could not help but cry out in pain. However, Qin Feiyong frowned. The heart was basically on the left side of the chest. Just now, Feng Ling Er could totally stab the dagger into Lin Chen's heart and end his life. But in the end, she stabbed the Chang Shui into Lin Chen's right chest. He did not believe that Feng Ling Er would lose her guard. She must have done it on purpose to let Lin Chen off. Let's go. Feng Ling Er pulled out the Chang Shui. She turned around and pulled Qin Feiyong, running towards the stone wall. Aren't you afraid of letting the tiger return to the mountain? Qin Feiyong frowned. Feng Ling Er said without turning her head, he's just possessed now. After we escape, we'll inform the Lin family to save him. What a soft-hearted woman. Qin Feiyong struggled to break free and snatch the Chang Shui. He turned around and rushed towards Lin Chen. His eyes were filled with coldness. Boom! However, at this moment, a terrifying aura descended. Zuan descended from the sky, holding a thumb-thick iron chain in his hand. On the other end of the iron chain, Ling Yunfei and the rest were tied up. They could not move at all. Zuan looked down at Qin Feiyong like a devil descending to the world. He smiled and said, "If you dare to touch him, I'll kill them all." Qin Feiyong's eyes darkened. He stopped and looked at Ling Yunfei and the rest. He frowned and said, "Why didn't you just run away when you knew that the Eagle Claw Peak was strange?" "We did run away, but his speed was too fast. We couldn't escape at all. Jiang Lauda, what's going on? Why did a devil suddenly appear?" Fatso and the rest were terrified. Qin Feiyong's face was as calm as water. He lowered his head and looked at Lin Chen, who was lying on the side. Whoosh! He rushed forward decisively. The Chang Shui shone with cold light. However, Zuan was like a lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Lin Chen. His face was filled with a sinister smile. His bony hand turned into an eagle's claw and grabbed at Qin Feiyong. Damn it! Qin Feiyong cursed and quickly retreated. He grabbed Feng Ling Er and was ready to enter the castle. "If you dare to continue to hide, I'll kill him first." Zuan stepped on Fatso's face. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Jiang Lauda, I have parents and children to take care of. I can't die. You must save me." Fatso shouted in horror. "You're not married yet. How can you have children?" Ling Yunfei's face darkened. He shouted, "If you're a man, have some backbone. What's there to be afraid of?" He looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile on his face. "I don't have any other wish. I just hope that you can take care of my mother for me after I die." Then he looked up at Zuan and shouted, "Old thing, bring it on. If I frown, I'm your grandson." "That's more like a man." Feng Ling Er nodded. She looked down at Lin Chen and shouted, "Did you see that? He's only 15 or 16 years old. He just became a disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall. But he has backbone and faith. He's dozens or hundreds of times stronger than you. Don't you feel ashamed?" Lin Chen grinned. Backbone and faith are bullshit. Nothing is more important than being alive. "Master, quickly kill one of them. If we don't use our full strength, they won't wake up." "That makes sense." Zuan laughed. He pointed his index finger, and a burst of battle chi shot out and entered Chen Ying's glabella. Ah! She screamed and died on the spot. There was a thumb-sized hole in her glabella. Blood was gushing out. Fatso and Lu Hong were scared out of their wits. Su Jian's cold face was filled with fear. Only Ling Yunfei stared coldly at Zuan. There was no fear or panic. Jiang Haoyan, right? Summon the nether demonic flame, or he'll be the next to die. Zuan pointed at Su Jian. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Feng Ling panicked and looked helplessly at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced at Fatso and the others. He looked up at Zuan and said, "It's not too late to stop now. You'll die if this matter gets out of hand." "Are you trying to scare me?" Zuan sneered. His eyes were filled with disdain. "Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're an 8-star combat emperor. If the Yan County can't do anything to you, there's still the state capital. If the state capital can't do anything, there's still the imperial capital. Let me ask you, no matter how strong you are, can you be stronger than the people from the imperial capital? Can you be stronger than the emperor of the great Qin Empire? In this world, the imperial capital is supreme. You're not allowed to stir up trouble." Qin Feiyang shouted sternly. Zuan's pupils shrunk. If this matter got out of hand, there was no need for the people from the imperial capital. The experts from the state capital were more than enough to crush his body and shatter his bones. But as long as he killed all these people, he wouldn't be able to stir up any trouble. Zuan's eyes were filled with killing intent. He said, "How about this if you return the nether demonic flame to me? Not only will I let you go, but I'll also never refine the blood-killing pill again. How about that?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "No one will believe your words. Why don't you come with us to the Yen City and turn yourself in? I'll return the nether demonic flame to you when we meet the King of Yen." Heezwen grinned. "Kid, you're smart, but smart people usually die early. I'm sorry to tell you that you've worn out my patience." As soon as he finished speaking, a battle chi shot out from his finger and entered Su Jian's glabella. Su Jian died on the spot. Qin Feiyang, smiled and said, "Go ahead and kill them. In any case, I'm not very familiar with them. Oh right, that Lu Hong and I are still enemies. Hurry up and kill her, so as to avoid being an eyesore. Jiang Haoyan, we're from the same sect. How can you be so heartless?" Lu Hong's face changed and she shouted, "When you tried to harm me, I didn't see you care about your sect." Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully and looked at Zuo and, "Old man, I'll be honest with you. I won't give you the nether demonic flame. As for them, kill them if you want." After that, he led Feng Ling into the castle. "Jiang Lauda, you can't abandon me." Fatso screamed. Zuan was stunned. He turned to Lin Qin and said angrily, "Didn't you say that they're close to Jiang Haoqian?" This Lin Qin was also a little confused. How ridiculous! Ling Yunfei shook his head and said sarcastically, "We've known Jiang Haoyan for less than 3 months. Moreover, people use each other. How can he compromise with you to save us?" Zuan's face darkened. He was at a loss. Inside the castle, Feng Ling stared at the nether demonic flame and suddenly said, "Jiang Haotian, why don't we just give him the pill fire?" Qin Feiyang said, "Do you think he'll let us go if we give him the pill fire?" Feng Ling said, "Didn't he say so just now?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "What's wrong with you? Can't you tell that he's just trying to appease us? If we really give him the pill fire, he'll kill us without hesitation." It was rare that Feng Ling didn't fly into a rage. She looked at Qin Feiyang helplessly and asked, "What should we do now? We can't just leave them to die, right?" "Don't worry. That old man is also very hesitant now. As long as we don't show up, he won't dare to kill Ling Yunfei and the other 2. Because if we kill them, he won't have any chips to threaten us. The most important thing now is to find a way to get in touch with the people outside. Sigh now. Only the big shots in Yen City can save us." Qin Feiyang sighed. However, the problem was that Zuan was guarding outside. How could they contact the people outside? Chapter 120. How could he break out of this deadlock? Qin Feiyong racked his brains. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he turned to look at Feng Ling and asked, "Do you have any image crystal?" Feng Ling was also deep in thought. "Heard of it?" She shook her head and said, "No, if I did, I would have already asked for help." "No." Qin Feiyong frowned and asked doubtfully, "Your position in the martial imperial palace is not low. Why don't you even have an image crystal?" "Nonsense. Do you know how expensive the image crystal is? Yen City's treasure pavilion only auctions one every month, and the price of the transaction is at least 5 million gold coins. Even if I sell all my belongings, I won't be able to gather so many gold coins. Moreover, if I really have 5 million gold coins, I might as well use it to buy pills and increase my own strength." Feng Ling said angrily, "Long hair, short knowledge." Qin Feiyong despised. The benefits brought about by the image crystal stone were extraordinarily shocking. Take the current situation, for example. If he had an image crystal, he would be able to ask for help from the people outside. He wouldn't be trapped here at all. "Your hair is not much shorter than mine," Feng Ling sneered. "Then a certain part of your body should be bigger than mine, right?" Qin Feiyong laughed sinisterly. "Pervert, take this." Feng Ling was startled, but when she saw Qin Feiyong's eyes, she instantly understood. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and pounced towards him with bared fangs and brandished claws. Qin Feiyong immediately retreated and said, "A gentleman uses his mouth, not his fists." Feng Ling laughed sinisterly. "I am not a gentleman. I am a woman. This trick is useless against me." Qin Feiyong hurriedly said, "Haven't you heard, if you can use your mouth, try not to use your fists?" Feng Ling chuckled. "Then have you heard, if you can use your fists, try not to use your mouth?" Qin Feiyong was both helpless and bitter. This woman was more difficult to deal with than she had imagined. Seeing that Feng Ling was about to pounce on him, Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up. He hurriedly said, "Wait, I have an idea." "Don't try to change the topic," Feng Ling shouted. Qin Feiyong grabbed her wrist and said in a deep voice, "Don't mess around. I really have a solution." Seeing his serious face, Feng Ling frowned and asked, "What method?" Qin Feiyong leaned over and whispered a few words into her ear. "Will this work?" After listening, Feng Ling looked doubtful. Qin Feiyong said, "Regardless of whether it works or not, we still have to try because this is the only way to escape." "All right." Feng Ling nodded. "I'll go out first." After Qin Feiyong finished speaking, he instantly disappeared without a trace. Outside, as expected, Zuan did not kill Ling Yunfei and the other two. Seeing Qin Feiyong come out, he laughed sinisterly. "Have you thought it through?" "Then hand over the nether devil flame." Qin Feiyong said disdainfully, "You think too much. I just came out to tell you, don't run if you have the guts." "Ha ha!" Zuan laughed wildly, as if he had heard the best joke in the world. "Is there something wrong with this little bastard's brain? He is an 8-star war emperor. Why would he run? What a joke! Continue to laugh. I'll see how long you can laugh." Qin Feiyong sneered. Seeing his serious expression, Zuan raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyong shook his head. "Nothing. Just remember not to run." "If you don't say it, I'll kill this fatso." Zuan stretched out his arm and pointed his index finger at Fatso's head. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, "Even if you kill him, I won't say it." Fatso cried, "Jiang Lauda, you can't be so heartless. For the sake of our night of revelry, please save Fat Lord." "That night revelry?" Zuan's old face twitched, and his gaze became extremely strange. "Ha ha!" Lin Chen suddenly laughed, pointed at Qin Feiyong, and said disdainfully, "So you have this kind of hobby, and you even found such a fat pig. Your heavy taste is really scary." Qin Feiyong's face was dark. The night of revelry that Fatso mentioned was actually drinking at Spring Breeze restaurant last night. However, Fatso's words were too ambiguous, so the two mistakenly thought that he and Fatso were gay. Not to mention Lin Chin. Even he felt disgusted when he thought about it. Jiang Lao de. Fatso opened his mouth again, wanting to say something. Shut up! Qin Feiyang roared. The words that came out of this bastard's mouth would definitely have a different meaning. He didn't want this misunderstanding to continue to deepen. Cough, cough! Zhuan coughed dryly and shouted, Say it quickly! Qin Feiyang said disdainfully, Don't scare me. I will never tell you that we have already informed King Yen and the rest through the image crystal. You have already said it. Lin Chen's eyes were full of ridicule. However, Zuo-An's face was extremely gloomy. Did you? Qin Feiyang was stunned. After thinking carefully, his face suddenly changed and he hurriedly said, I was talking nonsense. It's not true because we don't have the image crystal at all. Lin Chen wanted to continue mocking him, but his face suddenly turned pale because he had also realized the seriousness of the problem. Informed King Yen and the rest? Didn't that mean that King Yen and the rest were already on their way? Zuo-An asked. Lin Chen, do they have the image crystal? Lin Chen pondered for a while and said in a deep voice, Jiang Haoqin definitely doesn't have it. Feng Ling'er also didn't have it before, but we can't rule out the possibility that before leaving Yen City, the Martial King Hall Master gave her one to facilitate communication. Zuo-An stared at Qin Feiyang, his eyes flickering. He really couldn't tell if this was true or if Qin Feiyang was just scaring him. Qin Feiyang sneered secretly. With a thought, Feng Ling'er appeared out of thin air. Immediately, Feng Ling'er pointed at Qin Feiyang's nose and scolded him. What's wrong with you? How could you let such an important thing slip? If they run away, won't our plan to catch them all in one fell swoop be in vain? Why are you so unreliable? While Feng Ling'er was scolding him, Qin Feiyang was also anxiously winking at Feng Ling'er and glancing at Zuo-An and Lin Chen from time to time. It was as if he was telling Feng Ling'er to lower her voice and not let them hear her. After Feng Ling'er finished speaking, she glanced at Zuo-An and Lin Chen from the corner of her eyes and shouted at Qin Feiyang, What are you doing? Is there something wrong with your eyes? Do you believe that I'll dig them out for you? Oh my God, I did let it slip just now, but I've already told them that we don't have the image crystal, and they almost believed me. But now that you've shouted, we can't hide it anymore, can we? Qin Feiyang looked helpless. Ah, Feng Ling'er exclaimed and hurriedly turned to look at Zuo-An and Lin Chen. She waved her hand and said, I was talking nonsense just now. We really don't have the image crystal. Don't worry. Yes, we're just talking nonsense. Qin Feiyang nodded repeatedly and pulled Feng Ling'er into the castle. After entering the castle, both of them laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang said, I didn't know that you're so good at acting. Feng Ling'er was like a proud little princess. Of course, I'm proficient in all kinds of martial arts. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. This person really can't stand the compliment. She's so arrogant after being praised. Feng Ling'er asked, Do you think they'll be fooled? They should be. After all, our acting just now was flawless. Qin Feiyang said, and then listened carefully to the movements outside. At this moment, Lin Chen's face was pale and his body and mind were trembling. He looked at Zuo-An in horror and asked, Master, what should we do now? We'll be dead when Prince Yen and the others arrive. Why are you panicking? Zuo-An shouted coldly, but his heart was in a mess. Although he was now an 8-star combat emperor, he didn't have much confidence in facing the giants of Yen City, unless he broke through to the 9-star combat emperor, but it was unrealistic in a short period of time. Lin Chen said anxiously, Master, Feng Ling'er must have the image crystal. Let's go quickly. Let me think about it. Zuan lowered his head and fell into deep thought. This guy came out and said something ruthless. He was so confident that he didn't seem to be lying. Later, he let it slip and immediately denied it. In the end, Fong Ling Er appeared and scolded him without saying a word. Her expression didn't show any signs of faking it. It seems like it's true. No. Before he stepped into the 9-star combat emperor, he must not fight with Prince Yen and the other 4 old dogs. He looked up at Lin Chin and said in a deep voice, "Where there's life, there's hope. Let's retreat first." Good, good, good. Lin Chin nodded happily. He was waiting for this moment. Suddenly, he frowned and asked, "What about the nether demonic flame?" Zwa and sneered, "Let him keep it for now. I'll get it back sooner or later anyway." "What about the 3 of them?" Lin Chen looked at Ling Yunfei and the other 2. Zwan glanced at the 3 of them and said, "I'm planning to recruit people. The 3 of them have good aptitudes, so I'll keep them as my servants." After saying that, he grabbed Lin Chan with one hand and the iron chain with the other and flew into the sky. At this moment, Qin Feiyang appeared again with the Changshui in his hand. He stomped on the ground, and with the help of the force, he jumped more than 10 meters high and came to the side of the iron chain. Then, he waved the Changshui in his hand. With a loud clang, the iron chain broke on the spot. Then, he quickly reached out and grabbed the iron chain. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. Zhuan and Zhuan were dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events. How is this possible? This iron chain is made of black meteoric iron. Even I have to use all my strength to break it. But he actually broke it with one slash. Am I dreaming? Zhuan looked down at the iron chain in his hand and muttered to himself. His heart was filled with disbelief. All of a sudden, his body shook and his eyes shone brightly. That dagger was definitely a divine weapon. "Jian Haotian, wait for me. I'll definitely go to Yen City to find you," he muttered to himself. Then, with Lin Chin in tow, he soared into the air and quickly rushed out of the inner space. Boom! After a while, on the peak of the mountain, there was a loud noise that shook the sky and the earth. Eagle Claw Peak suddenly shook violently. Cracks, like a spider web, quickly spread across the entire mountain. This was obviously the sign of a landslide. Chapter 121. Hearing the commotion. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and led Fong Ling Er, Ling Yunfei, and the others out of the castle. When they saw the Eagle Claw Peak about to collapse, their faces suddenly changed. Qin Feiyang waved the Changshui, and the iron chains binding Ling Yunfei and the others immediately broke. "Hurry up and escape, or we'll all be buried alive." Fong Ling Er said anxiously. Lu Hong asked, "Where's Chening and Su Jian?" "They're already dead. Why care about them? Let's go." Fong Ling Er took the lead and ran to the front of the stone wall, preparing to climb up. Qin Feiyang grabbed her shoulder and shook his head. "It's too late to climb up. Let's directly blast open a passage." "That's right." Fong Ling Er nodded. Her jade-like hands clenched into fists, crazily bombarding the stone wall. A passage quickly appeared. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and led Ling Yunfei and the others into the passage, following closely behind Fong Ling Er. Qin Feiyang also grabbed the Changshui and helped at the side. Fatso roared, "It's collapsing faster." "Why don't you do it?" Fong Ling Er said angrily. "I'm not as fast as you." Fatso smiled embarrassedly. "Then shut up, don't talk nonsense. Barbarian elephant fist." She roared and used a perfect martial art, blasting all the way down like a hot knife through butter. Every punch could blast a dozen meters deep. A dozen breaths passed. Finally, a hole was blasted open in front. The group hurriedly ran out, looked up, and were scared out of their wits. The entire Eagle Claw Peak was collapsing. Gravel, soil, trees, and weeds turned into a shocking torrent, rolling from above. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" Qin Feiyang roared. The 5 people fled outside as if their lives depended on it. They had really used all of their strength to fight. The flood behind them was also chasing after them relentlessly. It was trying to devour them. At this moment, not only were they fleeing, but the ferocious beasts were also fleeing. They were densely packed, and their roars shook the heavens. It was a spectacular sight. However, ferocious beasts were constantly swallowed by the torrent and buried alive. Feng Ling Er urged, "Fatso, Lu Hong, hurry up!" Feng Ling Er was a 2-star martial ancestor, so her speed was naturally very fast, although Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei were 5-star martial masters. They both had auxiliary divine abilities. Only Fatso and Lu Hong were the slowest. The torrent was closing in step by step. The situation was not good. Feng Ling Er hurriedly retreated. She grabbed one person in each hand and dragged them along as she ran. Several dozen breaths later, the 5 of them stopped on a small hillside and looked back at the half-collapsed Eagle Claw Peak, their hearts filled with shock. The rumbling sound was like thunder, deafening. The thick dust and smoke covered half of the sky. No one knew how many ferocious beasts would be buried under the soil. It was really thrilling just now. Fatso patted his chest, still in shock. If it were not for Feng Ling Er's help, he would have been buried alive. "Hey, why don't I see that falcon?" Ling Yunfei was surprised. It should have been subdued by Zhuo and long ago. Qin Feiyang said, "Oh no, we are surrounded by them." Feng Ling Er suddenly exclaimed. Her face was ashen. In the surrounding forest, several huge, ferocious beasts were closing in on the 5 of them step by step. They were the Black Panther and other ferocious beasts that they had encountered before. Fatso said in horror, "What should we do now?" Sister-in-law's strength alone is not their opponent at all. Sister-in-law? Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Feng Ling Er said angrily, "Damn Fatso, if you talk nonsense again, I will seal your mouth." Fatso said with a sad face, "Sister-in-law, if you can get rid of them, not to mention sealing my mouth, even if you spank me, I don't mind." "I mind." Feng Ling Er gritted her teeth and glared at him. "Jiang Haotian, give me that dagger of yours." "No need, I have a way." Qin Feiyang said lightly. With a thought, the black wolf appeared. He looked at the black wolf and asked, "Brother Wolf, can you ask them to let us go?" The black wolf looked up at him, turned to the Black Panther and other ferocious beasts and growled. The Black Panther and other ferocious beasts stopped and growled as if they were talking to the black wolf. A moment later, the Black Panther and other ferocious beasts gathered together, turned around and ran away, quickly disappearing from their sight. The black wolf also took a step, ready to follow. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, "Brother Wolf, why don't you be my companion too?" After spending so much time with the Wolf King, he had an inexplicable good impression of wolves. The black wolf turned to look at him, but in the end, it did not stay and ran into the depths of the forest. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed, feeling rather disappointed. It seemed that it was not easy to make a ferocious beast follow a person willingly. When he looked at Feng Ling Er and the others, he found that they were looking at him strangely. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked in confusion. Feng Ling Er said, "If I remember correctly, there was a white wolf in the place where we were hiding. Why are you so close to the wolf?" Has she already guessed it? Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. Ling Yunfei also squinted his eyes, which emitted a cold light. He knew Qin Feiyang's true identity, and he knew what it meant if Qin Feiyang's identity was exposed. Therefore, he could only silence him. Noticing the change in Ling Yunfei, Qin Feiyang glanced at him, motioning him not to be impulsive, and then smiled. "Maybe it's because I'm popular with wolves." "Is that so?" Feng Ling Er narrowed her eyes and stared at him. "Then what do you think it is?" Qin Feiyang shrugged. At this time, Lu Hong frowned and said, I remember that Qin Feiyang, who is wanted by the royal family, also has a white wolf by his side. Feng Ling, Ai's red lips curled up slightly. She pursed her lips into a meaningful smile and nodded. That's right. Speaking of which, this Qin Feiyang is truly amazing. He's already world-renowned at such a young age. Even in the Swallow City, there's no one who doesn't know his name. So powerful? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Isn't this nonsense? How can a person wanted by the royal family be an ordinary person? But then again, it is said that Qin Feiyang is only 15 or 16 years old, about the same age as Jiang Laoda. He also has a white wolf by his side. Coincidentally, this Qin Feiyang appeared in Black Bear City at the same time as you, Jiang Laoda. Moreover, Jiang Laoda, you have always been very mysterious, and your origin is unknown. Could it be that you are Qin Feiyang in disguise? Fatso followed his train of thought and slowly pondered this conclusion. As soon as his voice faded, everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in bewilderment. Ling Yunfei was naturally pretending. Damn Fatso, what are you blindly thinking about? Qin Feiyang secretly cursed, but although Fatso was timid, his mind was really not simple. How can I be Qin Feiyang? If it was true, I wouldn't have saved you in the Eagle Claw Peak. As for the White Wolf, the world is so big and there are so many strange things. Qin Feiyang is not the only one who can be friends with a wolf. Qin Feiyang said with a calm smile. Fatso nodded and said, It seems to make sense. Then why did you hide the White Wolf? Qin Feiyang said, Nonsense, Qin Feiyang is wanted by the royal family. If I don't hide it, I don't know how many people will mistake me for Qin Feiyang like you. At that time, even if I have 10 mouths, I can't explain it clearly. Boss Jiang, don't say that you're not Qin Feiyang. Even if you are, Grandpa Fatty will continue to worship you. Fatso said with a smile. Don't flatter me. I'm not a vain person. I won't fall for it. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. Feng Ling stared at Qin Feiyang. Her eyes flashed and said with a smile, Okay, let's find a place to rest for the night. We'll set off for Yen City tomorrow morning. The 5 of them walked side by side in the jungle. Qin Feiyang also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, he finally fooled them. Half an hour later, they came to a lake. Ling Yunfei dived into the lake, caught 2 big fish, and grilled them. After a simple meal, Fatso, Lu Hong, and Feng Ling took a healing pill, sat cross-legged beside the fire, and closed their eyes to rest. Qin Feiyang walked to the riverside dozens of meters away, sat on a stone, and looked at the calm lake without saying a word. What are you thinking about? Ling Yunfei walked over, sat beside him, and asked. Qin Feiyang sighed. I'm thinking about Uncle Yuan. I don't know where he is now, and if he's okay. Uncle Yuan? Ling Yunfei was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, He is a very kind and amiable old man. For the past 5 years, he has taken care of me meticulously. In this world, other than my mother, the only one I care about is him. Ling Yunfei comforted. Good people will be rewarded. Yes, he is a good person. Qin Feiyang nodded. What about your father? Why haven't I heard you mention him? Ling Yunfei asked. Crack! Qin Feiyang's hands suddenly clenched. His dark eyes turned blood red in an instant. It was full of hatred and pain. There was even a hint of killing intent. What's wrong? Ling Yunfei was shocked. At this moment, Qin Feiyang seemed to be possessed by an azura in his eyes, and the murderous aura emitted from his body was extremely shocking. In the future, don't mention my father in front of me. Otherwise, even if it's you, I won't be polite. Qin Feiyang said word by word, and his words were cold and piercing to the bone. After saying that, the bloody light in his eyes quickly receded. After a while, it returned to its previous appearance. Yes, Ling Yunfei nodded, but in his heart he was very surprised. Chapter 122. What are you guys whispering about? Feng Ling Er's voice suddenly came from behind. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and turned around, only to see Feng Ling Er getting up and walking towards them. Ling Yunfei said in a low voice, "This woman is very scheming. She's not as easy to fool as Lu Hong and Fatso. You must be careful." Qin Feiyong said, "Fatso is not that easy to fool. He's probably just pretending." Him. There was a trace of disdain in Ling Yunfei's eyes. "You haven't spent much time with him, so you don't know him. Although he's timid, he's not stupid. In short, don't underestimate him," Qin Feiyong warned. Ling Yunfei's pupils contracted. Since Qin Feiyong gave him such a high evaluation, it seemed that he had to pay attention to Fatso in the future. Feng Ling Er came to the two. Ling Yunfei got up and said respectfully, "Senior Sister Ling, I thought you were ugly, so I covered your face with a mask, but I didn't expect you to be so beautiful. It's amazing." Feng Ling Er's face was cold. "Don't flatter me. You knew Jiang Haotian's true identity, but you colluded with him and deceived him. This is a serious crime, do you understand?" "What do you mean?" "Why can't I understand?" Ling Yunfei's heart skipped a beat, and he looked puzzled. "Still pretending? Don't think I didn't notice the killing intent you showed when we guessed that Jiang Haotian was Qin Feiyong." Feng Ling Er sneered. Qin Feiyong got up and looked at her. "What do you want?" Since he couldn't hide it, there was no need to continue pretending. Feng Ling Er shook her head and said, "If I wanted to do anything, I would have already done it to you. Don't worry, I will pretend that I don't know anything about this matter." It was not because of how charming Qin Feiyong was. It was because Qin Feiyong had saved her in the Eagle Claw Peak. Otherwise, she would have already been violated by Lin Qin and lost her virginity. To a woman, nothing was more important than this. Ugh! Qin Feiyong and Li Mu, who did not know the reason, were astonished. However, now that Feng Ling Er had agreed to keep it a secret, they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Qin Feiyong asked, "Miss Ling, have you heard of a person named Linny in Yen City?" "Linny?" Feng Ling Er pondered for a moment and nodded. "Yes, it is said that she is from a branch of the Lin family. Lin Han is preparing to adopt her as his daughter. There are also rumors that when she turns 16, she will be officially married to the royal family." "Why are you suddenly asking about her? Do you know her?" Feng Ling Er was puzzled. Qin Feiyong nodded with a firm light in his eyes. No matter what, he must rescue Lin Yi. This was a promise. It was the love of a brother to his sister. Feng Ling Er asked curiously, "Qin Feiyong, how did you become enemies with the King of Yen?" "I didn't become enemies with the King of Yen." Qin Feiyong shook his head. "Then why is he looking for you?" Feng Ling Er frowned. Qin Feiyong said, "I became enemies with the Lin family of Yen City. When I was in Iron Bull Town, Lin Yi's hometown, I killed Lin Han's youngest son, Lin Bailey." "What?" Feng Ling Er and Ling Yunfei looked at each other. Their eyes were full of disbelief. "He even dared to kill the people of the Lin family of Yen City. Isn't this bastard too timid?" "Tell me about it." Feng Ling Er suddenly became interested. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "Why are you so gossipy?" Feng Ling Er snorted coldly and threatened, "If you don't say it, I will announce your true identity." Qin Feiyong was helpless. He briefly recounted what had happened in Iron Ox Town, but he did not mention the relationship with Luo Qingzhu and her daughter, as well as Zhao Shuanger and Uncle Yuan. After listening, Feng Ling Er suddenly realized and said angrily, "This Lin family is really too much. Do they think that they can cover the sky in the county of Yen just because they're close to the royal family? I can't stand such pretentious people the most. It can't be helped. This is the way of the world. People with power and influence are not afraid of anything. It is difficult for people without money and influence to keep their dignity as a human being. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sneered. Ling Yunfei said, but the person who suffered the most in this incident is Lin Yi's father. Not only did he not get any benefits, but he also lost a daughter. Qin Feiyang said, he is trapped in a cocoon of his own making. He had no sympathy for Lin Chang at all, because this person was not worthy of sympathy at all. Feng Ling'er said, so your biggest purpose of going to Yen City is to save Lin Yi? Sort of. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Only he knew that his real purpose was to go home. Also, he wanted to uproot the Lin family of Yen City. Feng Ling'er shook her head and said, I'm afraid this is difficult. The Lin family of Yen City has the royal family behind them. In addition, the Lin family itself has the War Emperor. Even the Danwang Hall, Martial Emperor Hall, and Treasure Pavilion have to be polite to the Lin family. With your strength alone, the hope is slim. Qin Feiyang said, let's talk about it after we go to Yen City. Feng Ling'er suddenly said, I have an idea. What idea? Qin Feiyang and the other man looked at her suspiciously. Feng Ling'er joked, you can propose marriage to Lin Yi first. With your alchemy talent, the Lin family will probably agree without hesitation. Good idea. A person who can refine the best quality medicinal pill, as long as he doesn't die prematurely, his future value will definitely far exceed that of the royal family. The Lin family can't wait to curry favor with you. Ling Yunfei nodded in agreement. In his heart, he was actually bitter. In the beginning, Qin Feiyang said that he wanted to refine the scarlet-colored glass pill by himself. Not only did he not believe it, but he also ridiculed him. Later, the news that Qin Feiyang refined the best quality medicinal pill quickly spread in Black Bear City. When he heard the news, he was dumbfounded on the spot. This guy is too heaven-defying. He is completely inhuman. This method won't work. Qin Feiyang shook his head. If this was the case, he could have eloped with Lin Yi in the beginning. Why bother? He only regarded Lin Yi as a sister, and there was no affection between men and women. He couldn't do such a thing as proposing marriage. Boom! All of a sudden, an earth-shattering explosion could be heard from a place far away. The three looked at each other and hurriedly looked over. Fatso and Lu Hong were also awakened and quickly ran toward Qin Feiyang and the other two. What happened? Fatso asked. We don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The sound came from the direction of Black Bear City. Ling Yunfei had a suspicious look on his face. Did something happen in Black Bear City? Do you want to go back and take a look? Feng Ling'er asked. Let's go and take a look. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and nodded. The group of 5 immediately turned back and ran wildly in the jungle. After 2 hours, the west gate of Black Bear City finally came into their sight. As soon as they saw the city gate, they felt uneasy. Usually, there were only 2 people guarding the city gate, but at this moment, there were more than a dozen figures. There was usually no one on the city wall, but now there was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 7 steps. It was stricter than when Qin Feiyang was sealed. At this time, the sky was dark and the full moon was in the sky. The hazy moonlight spread down, and the mountains and rivers seemed to be covered with a layer of silver coat. Who is it? Seeing someone running over, the people guarding the city gate suddenly shouted, pulled out their swords, and became vigilant. It's me, Jiang Haotian. Qin Feiyang said loudly. Jiang Haotian. Those people looked at each other, and their eyes were full of doubts. After a few people ran closer, it was indeed Jiang Haotian and others. A middle-aged man greeted them. It was Guba. He asked, Didn't you go to Yen City? Why did you come back? Qin Feiyang asked in bewilderment. Elder Gu, why are you personally standing guard here? Guba said in a deep voice, 2 hours ago, our pill hall was attacked, and the alchemy fire was stolen. What? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other, and their eyes were full of shock. Someone dared to come and steal the alchemy fire of the pill hall? Who was so daring? That person came and went without a trace. We didn't even see his face, and, speaking of this, Guba looked at Feng Ling and stopped talking. Feng Ling frowned. Elder Gu, what do you want to say? Guba gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, Your grandfather was also taken away. How did this happen? Feng Ling's face suddenly changed. We don't know either. Guba shook his head. Snatched the alchemy fire, snatched Elder Feng. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself, and his mind was thinking quickly. Suddenly his eyes trembled, and he said in surprise, Could it be Zuan? Fatso said in a deep voice, You and Fat Lord are thinking the same thing. It must be him. Not good. Ling Yunfei's face suddenly changed. He looked at Guba and asked, What about my mother? Guba said, I don't know about your mother, but she should be fine because the martial arts hall didn't release any news about anyone being taken away. No, I have to go to the martial arts hall to take a look. I'll look for you later. Ling Yunfei said to Qin Feiyang and the others, and ran into the city without looking back. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Ling patted her shoulder, and comforted her. Don't worry, the nether devil flame is still in our hands. Zuan won't do anything to your grandfather for now. Feng Ling nodded, and tears fell like rain. Qin Feiyang asked, Elder Gu, where is the hall master? Guba said, They are all in the conference hall. Qin Feiyang said, Let's go to the pill hall. The four of them entered the city and ran towards the pill hall. Dozens of breaths later, they ran into the conference hall with ease. Luo Xiong, Elder Mo, the martial arts hall master, the precious treasure pavilion master, and the Jiang clan head were sitting in the conference hall, discussing something. The atmosphere was very heavy. Seeing Qin Feiyang and the others suddenly running in, they were stunned at first, and then quickly stood up to welcome them. Luo Xiong asked, Why are you back? Qin Feiyang didn't beat around the bush and said directly, Hall Master, we know who took away the alchemy fire and Elder Feng. Who? Luo Xiong said. Zuan Lin Qin. Qin Feiyang said word by word. Lin Qin. How could it be him? Luo Xiong's eyes were filled with disbelief. Jiang clan head frowned and said, Who is Zuan? Elder Mo said in a deep voice, 8 years ago, there was an alchemist who risked universal condemnation to refine the blood spirit elixir and was killed by King Yen outside the Yen city. This alchemist was Zuan. Chapter 123. He is not dead. Qin Feiyang said coldly, He has been hiding in the Eagle Claw Peak for the past 8 years, refining the blood demon pill. He is now an 8-star combat emperor. What? 8-star combat emperor? Luo Xiong and the others were shocked. What the hell is going on? Hurry up and tell us everything, the martial arts hall master said. However, Qin Feiyang frowned. If he said it, would Luo Xiong take the opportunity to ask him to hand over the nether devil flame? This matter can't be hidden. It's better to tell the truth. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang murmured and told the story of the Eagle Claw Peak in detail. There is such a thing. Damn it. Ling you are so silly. How could you bring them to such a dangerous place? I will inform the Grand Hall Master immediately. I will go too. The three of them were furious and left in a hurry. Zuan the devil was not dead. This was a big matter and could not be neglected. I want to be alone. Feng Ling said as she turned around and walked out of the hall. Her frail figure looked particularly miserable. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and followed her. The two of them walked into a pavilion, one in front of the other. Feng Ling sat on a stone bench. Tears gushed out and her face was full of self-blame. Qin Feiyang sighed and did not know how to comfort her. The current situation could be said to have been caused by Fenglinger. If she did not bring everyone to the Eagle Claw Peak, nothing would have happened. If she had killed Lin Qin, Elder Feng would not have been taken away, because it was obvious that Lin Qin must have told Zhuo and that Feng Qing was Feng Ling Er's grandfather. That was why Zhuo and took him away. This was the consequence of being soft-hearted. Suddenly, Feng Ling Er turned and threw herself into Qin Feiyang's arms and cried bitterly. Qin Feiyang didn't know what to do. In the end, he reached out his hand and patted her back. "Don't worry. Nothing will happen." Feng Ling Er said, "Zhuo is a devil. He's vicious and merciless. How can I not worry about him?" Qin Feiyang sighed. "Things have already come to this point. It's useless for you to worry. I really hate myself. Why didn't I just kill Lin Qin?" Feng Ling Er blamed herself. "There will be opportunities in the future." Qin Feiyang smiled. Da-da. Along with the sound of footsteps, Ling Yunfei and Fatso ran over. Seeing the two hugging each other, they immediately turned their heads with an awkward expression. Feng Ling Er's cheeks turned red. She quickly stood up and wiped her tears. She lowered her head and said, "I feel much better. Thank you." Qin Feiyang smiled and turned to Ling Yunfei. He asked, "How is your mother?" Ling Yunfei nodded and said worriedly, "But now I don't feel at ease. I let her continue to stay in Black Bear City." Qin Feiyang nodded. "That's true. If Zhuo finds out about your relationship with her, he will definitely do something to her. But Zhuo is very resourceful. Unless you bring your mother to the Martial King Hall, no matter where she goes, it's not safe." Ling Yunfei's heart sank. He said, "When the Chief Hall Master comes, I will plead with him. I hope he will agree." "The Martial Arts Chief Hall Master is coming?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. After such a big incident, he should come. Ling Yunfei frowned. He wasn't sure. "So you are here." At this moment, Lu Hong ran over and said, "The Hall Master wants you to go over." "Let's go," Qin Feiyang said. The group quickly returned to the conference hall. Patriarch Zhang had also left. In the hall, only Luo Xiong and Elder Amo were left. Qin Feiyang asked, "Hall Master, is there anything you need from us?" Luo Xiong said, "The Chief Hall Master wants you to go to Yen City immediately." Ling Yunfei, you too." "Why?" Feng Ling Er asked. Luo Xiong said, "Because the Chief Hall Master is worried that Zhuo may come back. At that time, none of you will be able to escape. As for your grandfather, the Chief Hall Master said that he will not sit back and do nothing." Qin Feiyang frowned. "What about Zhuo? Are we going to let him go?" Luo Xiong smiled. "Of course not. But Zhuo is an 8-star combat emperor. Even if the Chief Hall Master comes to Black Bear City, he may not be able to find him. So they plan to wait for him. After all, you took his alchemy fire. He will come to you sooner or later." Qin Feiyang said angrily, "Why didn't they report this to the state capital?" "The state capital?" Luo Xiong's pupils shrunk. He shook his head and said, "They have their own ideas. We are insignificant people and have no right to interfere. We just need to do as they say." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows, but then he sighed helplessly. There was a saying that the emperor was far away from the sky. Although the imperial power controlled everything, it only controlled the overall situation. Even the imperial power could not control some small things in the local area. "Let's go." Luo Xiong got up and said, "I will escort you to Yen City. Elder Mo, when I am not here, you will be in charge of everything in the hall." "Yes." Elder Mo nodded. Ling Yunfei hurriedly asked, "What about my mother?" Luo Xiong smiled. "Don't worry. We have already released fake news that your mother has been sent to Yen City. As long as she does not appear in front of others, Zhuan will not come to Black Bear City even if he finds out about your relationship with her. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "This move of throwing a brick to attract jade and deceiving everyone is a good idea." On the surface, Ling Yunfei's mother had gone to Yen City, but in fact, she was still in the martial arts hall. In the future, if Zuan wanted to kidnap her, he would have to go to Yen City. Speaking of which, this was also a bait. Fatso patted Ling Yunfei's shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother, as long as we don't say anything, no one else will know about this. You should be relieved now, right?" Ling Yunfei nodded. A smile finally appeared on his face. The five of them followed Luo Xiong out of the conference hall. Luo Xiong stood at the door. He put his finger to his mouth and blew a loud whistle that spread into the distance. Chirp! Not long after, accompanied by a high-pitched chirp, a big black bird flapped its huge wings and flew across the sky. It was an eagle. Its wingspan was more than 10 meters, but there was no fierce aura around it. This was because this kind of eagle was specially bred for transportation. It was very dependent on humans. The eagle landed on the ground. Luo Xiong walked over and said with a smile, "Old friend, I'll have to trouble you again." Chirp! The eagle chirped softly and rubbed Luo Xiong's face with its huge beak. It looked very docile. "Let's go." Luo Xiong patted the eagle's head. He turned around and called out to Qin Feiyang and the others. Then he jumped up and landed on the eagle's back. Fat Lord has never been treated like this before. Fatso ran over and jumped on the eagle's back. He touched the soft feathers excitedly. After Qin Feiyang and the others got on, the eagle let out a sharp chirp and soared into the sky. Riding on the eagle, they soared into the sky. Ling Yunfei and Lu Hong were also very excited. Fatso was even more excited. Only Qin Feiyang and Feng Ling Er were normal. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Hong in front of him. His eyes flickered. Suddenly he leaned over and whispered in her ear, "There's something I want to tell you." "What is it?" Lu Hong was puzzled. The two of them were next to each other. As long as they were not too loud, Luo Xiong, who was standing at the front, would not hear them. Qin Feiyang said, "You were there at the Eagle Claw Peak. Zuoin will definitely not let you go. I believe you should know this." Lu Hong nodded. Qin Feiyang sighed. "I'm really worried that others will mistake me for Qin Feiyang. So, as long as you don't tell anyone about the White Wolf, we will be friends in the future. We will support and help each other. What do you think?" "Really?" Lu Hong's eyes lit up. This person's future was limitless. If she could really become friends with him, she would definitely get a lot of benefits in the future. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Of course." Lu Hong said, "Okay, I will definitely keep this secret." In fact, these days, she had been thinking about how to bury the hatchet with this person. Now, the opportunity had come to her. Naturally, she could not miss it. Moreover, it was this person who saved her at the Eagle Claw Peak. Even if there were no additional conditions, she should help him. Lu Hong said again, "If I don't tell, what about them?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "In addition to Fatso, I have already told Ling Yunfei and Feng Ling Er." Lu Hong was shocked. Ling Yunfei had a good relationship with this person. It was normal for him to help keep the secret. But Feng Ling Er was a proud daughter of heaven. Why would she help this person? At this time, Fatso came over and said with a smile, "When did you become so intimate? Aren't you afraid that sister-in-law will be jealous?" Lu Hong blushed and quickly lowered her head. "Don't talk nonsense." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. He pulled Fatso to his side and muttered a few words in his ear. When the fatty heard that, a glint flashed through his squinted eyes. He raised his head, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said in dissatisfaction, "Am I the kind of person who likes to gossip?" Qin Feiyang smiled and patted Fatso's shoulder. He did not say anything else. He could already conclude that this damn Fatso definitely knew his true identity. It was just that he did not point it out. Time flew. In the middle of the night, a magnificent ancient city entered their line of sight. The ancient city covered hundreds of miles and was extremely huge. Layers of halls rose and fell. They were arranged in picturesque disorder and had an extraordinary aura. The four walls were like giant pythons shining with a cold luster. An ancient aura rushed over and attacked everyone's vision. That's Yen City. Fatso gripped his fists tightly and his eyes shone brightly. Under the hazy moonlight, the city was like a wild, ferocious beast lying on the ground, shocking everyone's hearts. Luo Xiong warned, "You guys have to remember that Yen City is the capital of Yen County. Therefore, flying with beasts is absolutely forbidden here." With that said, he stepped on the ground gently and the eagle swooped down, landing on the plains in front of the city gates. The plains were dead silent in the middle of the night. The few of them jumped down from the eagle's back one after another. Luo Xiong patted the eagle on the shoulder and smiled. "Old friend, go look for food in the nearby mountains first." Screech! The eagle spread its wings and soared into the skies. "Follow me," Luo Xiong called out and turned towards the city gates. In Yen City, apart from flying with beasts, you can't fight in private, and even more so, you can't kill anyone. Ling Yunfei asked, "What if someone provokes you again and again?" Luo Xiong said, "There's a martial arts arena in the city. You can fight however you want, but you have to have the ability to do so. If you're short of money, you can also go to the martial arts arena." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Luo Xiong smiled. "You'll know when you get there. Soon." The group arrived in front of the city gates. Two bold and powerful words were engraved on the city gates, releasing an astonishing aura. "Yen City. Hall Master Luo, please stop for inspection." There were two guards in front of the city gates. They wore black armor and iron helmets, each holding a 3 feet long spear in their hands. They looked at the few of them expressionlessly with cold eyes. Feng Ling Er shouted, "What's there to check? Get out of here." One of the guards said, "Miss Ling, we're just doing our job. Please forgive us." The other guard said, "After knowing that the devil's Yen is not dead, King Yen immediately ordered that from now on, anyone who enters Yen City will be strictly interrogated." "It's only right." Luo Xiong smiled. One of the guards took out a strange stone. It was shaped like an eye and was the size of a palm. It was simple and unadorned and looked extremely ordinary. But when he saw this stone, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Chapter 124. The Heaven's Eye Stone was a very magical stone. Once touched, all illusions would have nowhere to hide. For example, Qin Feiyang. If he touched the Heaven's Eye Stone, he would immediately return to his original appearance. In other words, at this moment he was facing the crisis of his identity being exposed. What should I do? Qin Feiyang's thoughts were running fast. If his identity was exposed here, unless he hid in the castle for the rest of his life, he would die. At the same time, Feng Ling Er and Ling Yunfei glanced at Qin Feiyang secretly, their hearts full of worry. Fatso's eyes were also flickering. Only Lu Hong and Luo Xiong did not have any abnormalities. The black-armored guard said, "I believe you should all know that this is the Heaven's Eye Stone. Put your hands on it one by one." Luo Xiong was the first to walk up and put his hand on it. 3 breaths passed. The Heaven's Eye Stone did not respond. The black-armored guard said with a smile, "Hall Master Luo, please forgive me for offending you just now. You can now enter the city. This is how it should be in times of emergency." Luo Xiong smiled and stepped aside. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and said, "Hurry up, don't waste time here." Ling Yunfei, Fatso, and Lu Hong were checked one after another. The Heaven's Eye Stone did not show any abnormalities. What should we do? Qin Feiyang stood aside, looking calm on the surface, but he was anxious in his heart. Feng Ling Er did not move for a long time, thinking of a way. Luo Xiong urged, Ling Haotian, hurry up. Feng Ling Er stepped forward and looked up at the black-armored guard, her eyes full of anger. The black-armored guard said, Miss Ling please cooperate. Zuan is an old man. He can change his appearance, but he can't become a woman, right? Feng Ling Er said angrily. The black-armored guard nodded and said, You're right. Gender can't be changed, but we can't rule out that there are women among his subordinates. Feng Ling Er said, You mean I'm his subordinate? The black-armored guard waved his hand and said, No, no, no. I'm saying that his subordinates might disguise themselves as you. Preposterous. Feng Ling Er was mad with anger. She waved her jade-like hand and slapped the heaven's ice stone away. It hit the city wall and shattered on the spot. Feng Ling Er, you are defying the law. The black-armored guard shouted furiously. You're insulting me. Feng Ling Er also shouted. Qin Feiyang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Without the heaven's ice stone, he didn't need to be inspected anymore. It was all thanks to this woman. His expression turned serious, and he was about to go up and persuade him. However, another black-armored guard suddenly said, Don't argue with her. I still have a heaven's ice stone here. After saying that, he really took out a heaven's ice stone. Qin Feiyang's footsteps froze. His heart, which had just calmed down, was once again in his throat. The black-armored guard grabbed the heaven's ice stone and looked at Feng Ling Er. He said in a deep voice, I'm warning you, don't destroy this heaven's ice stone again. Otherwise, I'll have to take you to the King of Yen. Crack! However, before he could finish his words, Feng Ling Er waved her hand and shattered the heaven's ice stone. Come on, I'm just about to meet the King of Yen. I want to ask him. My grandfather is a citizen of the county of Yen and an elder of the Pill Hall. Now that Zuan has kidnapped my grandfather as the king of the county of Yen. Why hasn't he come to rescue him? Feng Ling Er shouted angrily. Tears flowed down her cheeks. She looked extremely miserable. Qin Feiyang hurried forward and comforted her. Don't cry. Your grandfather will be fine. Luo Xiong also hurried over and said to the two black-armored guards, Ling Er's grandfather has been kidnapped. We don't know if he's dead or alive. It's inevitable for her to be emotional. Please forgive her. The two black-armored guards looked at each other and frowned slightly. Tap, tap. At this moment, steady and powerful footsteps could be heard coming from the city. It came from afar. After a while, a middle-aged man walked out from the city gate. He was about 8 meters tall and wore a purple gold robe. He had a square face and a majestic aura. It's him. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists tightly. The man was Lin Han. Greetings, Patriarch Lin. The two black-armored guards bowed and greeted him. Luo Xiong also cupped his fists and said, Long time no see, Patriarch Lin. How have you been? Luo Xiong? Lin Han was surprised and said, I didn't expect you to send them here personally. Luo Xiong smiled and said, They're all future stars. Nothing can happen to them. Lin Han glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others and nodded. They're all good. Greetings, Lord Lin. Ling Yunfei and the others bowed. However, Qin Feiyang didn't. Feng Ling Er didn't either. Lin Han glanced at Qin Feiyang and turned to Luo Xiong. Since you've sent them here, you can go back. I'll send them to the Martial Imperial Hall and Danwang Hall. No, they don't come with good intentions. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He cupped his fists and said, We're flattered that Patriarch Lin personally came to welcome us in the middle of the night. In fact, he was reminding Luo Xiong. There were so many people in the Lin family. Why would Lin Han, the patriarch of the family, come in person? And in the middle of the night? He could have sent someone else. Therefore, his motive was not pure. The people present weren't stupid. After being reminded by Qin Feiyang, they all became vigilant. Luo Xiong was also shocked. He smiled and said, "Patriarch Lin, you're of noble status. How could I trouble you to send them personally? Let me do it." Lin Han glanced at Qin Feiyang again, a cold glint in his eyes as he said, "Such a big thing happened in Black Bear City. There must be a lot of things that need to be dealt with. Don't waste your time on them. Go back. Don't tell me you still don't trust me." "That's not it. It's mainly because the alchemy fire was stolen. A pill hall without alchemy fire is not a pill hall. I came to Yen City for 2 reasons. First, to escort them. Second, to ask the Grand Hall Master to give me alchemy fire. I'm going to the Danwang Hall anyway. I won't trouble you." Luo Xiong smiled and said politely, "I'll tell the Grand Hall Master about the alchemy fire. Please go back." Lin Han's tone became a little harsh. Obviously, he had lost his patience. Since when did the Lin family have the right to interfere with the matters of the Danwang Hall? You're meddling in the matters of the Martial Imperial Hall. You're meddling too much. At this moment, 2 hoarse voices with a trace of coldness could be heard. Whoosh! 2 white-haired old men quickly flew out of the city and stopped in front of Lin Han. "Elder Wan." Feng Ling Er immediately ran to the old man on the left. Her face was full of grievances. Elder Wan smiled and said, "Ling Er, I already know about your grandfather's situation. Don't worry, we'll find a way to save him." "Okay." Feng Ling Er nodded. She pointed at the 2 black-armored guards and said angrily, "Just now they actually suspected that I'm Zhua An's lackey. This is an insult to my character. Elder Wan, you have to uphold justice for me." "What?" Elder Wan stared at the 2 guards and shouted, "How dare you slander the core disciples of the Martial Imperial Hall? Do you want to die?" "Elder Wan, this is a misunderstanding. Yes, we just want to confirm Miss Ling Er's identity. We don't mean anything else." The 2 black-armored guards hurriedly explained, "Don't you know that her grandfather has been kidnapped by Zhuan? What you're doing is no different from adding fuel to the fire. If it was me, I would have killed all of you on the spot." Elder One shouted. The guard nodded and said, Yes, we're wrong. But this is King Yan's order." Before he could finish, Elder One sneered and said, "Don't use King Yan to pressure me. The royal family has no right to interfere with the disciples of the Martial Imperial Hall." The 2 black-armored guards looked at each other helplessly. They took 2 steps back and lowered their heads. Seeing the scene, Qin Feiyang was shocked. It seemed that Feng Ling Er's position in the Martial Imperial Hall was not ordinary. Luo Xiong heaved a sigh of relief and went forward with a smile. "Old Wan, Old He, your old friend is here. Why didn't you say hello? Have you forgotten about me?" "Ha! How dare we forget about you? Old friend, when we're done, let's go and have a few drinks." The 2 of them laughed. It was obvious that the 3 of them had a good relationship. "I don't have time to drink with you now." Luo Xiong shook his head and sighed deeply. He waved at Qin Feiyang and the others and said, "Come over here. Let me introduce you." Qin Feiyang and the others immediately ran over. After Luo Xiong's introduction, they then found out that Elder Wan was the enforcement elder of the Martial Imperial Hall. He was the enforcement elder of the Danwang Hall. The enforcement elder's position was second only to the 2 Grand Hall Masters. They had absolute power. For example, Feng Cheng and Elder Amo were the enforcement elders of the Black Bear City's Pill Hall. Their positions were much higher than the enforcement elders. Of course, Feng Cheng and Elder Mo's strength could not be compared to these 2. Even though Luo Xiong was very familiar with the 2 of them, the difference in their cultivation was like heaven and earth. They were on completely different levels. It could be said that in the entire county of Yen, these 2 were the most important people. They did not dare to neglect such important people. They quickly bowed. "Not bad. All of you are good seedlings. Elder One glanced at them and smiled with satisfaction. Elder He nodded. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Jiang Haoyan, I heard that you can refine supreme grade pills? Hearing this, Elder Wan, Lin Han, and the two black-armored guards looked at Qin Feiyang. He's the center of attention again. Ling Yunfei and Fatso looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. There was really no comparison between people. Qin Feiyang glanced at them and scratched his head. He looked at Elder He and said with an embarrassed smile, If this disciple says no, will Elder beat me up? Ah. Elder He was stunned. He then shook his head and laughed. This kid was quite interesting. His face turned cold and said, If you can't, I won't beat you up, but I will kill you. Ah, Qin Feiyang exclaimed and nodded. If that's the case, I'll admit it. I can refine supreme grade pills. Well done. Fat Lord gives you full marks. Fatso chuckled. Elder He's face darkened and said, Kid, it's a good thing that you can refine supreme grade pills. Why do you look so unwilling? I want to keep a low profile. Qin Feiyang looked helpless. Low profile? Chapter 125. Elder He said, Let's not waste any more time. Let's go to the Danwang Hall. After taking a few steps, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at Lin Han. He sneered, Since you care so much about our disciple, do you want to go to the Danwang Hall and have a cup of tea with me? Humph. Lin Han snorted and took the lead to enter the city gate, disappearing at the end of the street. What a hypocrite. Elder He and Elder Wan looked at each other with a hint of mockery in their eyes. They walked into the city side by side. Qin Feiyang and the others quickly followed. Seeing this, the two black-armored guards wanted to say something, but stopped. They wanted to say that Jiang Haoyan had not been checked yet, but when they thought of Elder Wan and Elder He's attitude, they did not dare to say it. The two thought about it and gave up. After all, not everyone could refine a superior-grade medicinal pill. There should be no problem with this person's identity. It was rare for old friends to meet, so they naturally had a lot to talk about. Therefore, Luo Xiong, Elder Wan, and Elder He walked at the front, talking and laughing. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them and took a step forward, landing beside Fengling Air. He said in a low voice, Thank you. Fengling Air said, This is the last time I'll help you. From now on, we don't owe each other anything. Fatso came up and laughed. Sister-in-law, are you going to divorce Zhang Lauda? The two of them immediately glared at Fatso. Ling Yunfei said helplessly, I said Fatso is dead. I won't say anything. Can you keep quiet? Did Fat Lord say anything wrong? Fatso looked innocent. Ling Yunfei said angrily, Nonsense. Didn't you see them hugging each other in the pill hall? This means that their relationship is as deep as the sea. How can sister-in-law divorce him? That's true. Fatso nodded. Qin Feiyang was helpless. Even Ling Yunfei joined in the commotion. It seemed that it would be difficult to explain this matter clearly. Elder, he suddenly turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. I heard from Luo Xiong that you are very smart. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He waved his hand and said, You flatter me, Hall Master is too kind. Elder, he said, Let's not talk about these empty words. Let me ask you, why did Lin Han come to intercept you? Fatso immediately raised his hand and roared. Fat Lord knows. No, I know. Elder, he frowned slightly and shifted his gaze to Fatso. He asked with interest, Tell me about it. Lin Han intercepted us for 2 reasons. First place, Lin Qin. Second, the Netherworld Devil Flame. Fatso tidied his hair and said seriously, Not bad. Elder, he was surprised and asked, What's your name? Fatso's face twitched. Didn't Hall Master introduce me just now? Ahem. Elder, he coughed and said awkwardly, I didn't remember just now. I think you're too lazy to remember. Fatso grumbled in dissatisfaction. He felt wronged and said, Disciple is Situ Tianyu. Elder, he nodded. Not bad, not bad. I will arrange a slightly easier chores for you. Thank you for your care, Elder. Fatso quickly bowed and thanked him. He was so grateful that he shed tears. However, he was extremely disdainful. No matter how easy it was, wasn't it still a chores? Chores? Qin Feiyang was stunned and then came to a realization. Qin Wentian had almost forgotten that, for the other 2 slots, they still had to work as odd job workers in the Pill Emperor Hall for a year before they could officially concoct pills. Qin Feiyang patted Ling Yunfei's shoulder and smiled. Do you still dare to look down on him? Ling Yunfei shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fatso's brain wasn't simple. The saying, great wisdom appears to be stupidity, was probably used to describe people like him. Yen City was divided into 4 districts: East District, South District, North District, and West District. The Royal Palace was located in the East District. The Danwang Hall was located in the South District. The Martial Imperial Hall was located in the North District. The Precious Treasure Pavilion was located in the West District. The 4 major forces each guarded 1 district. Therefore, Qin Feiyang parted ways with Feng Ling'er and Ling Yunfei not long after. One is in the South District, and the other is in the North District. They are more than 100 li apart. Jiang Laoda, if you miss sister-in-law and want to date her in the future, you'll have to run. Fatso said with a sneaky smile. Why do you talk so much nonsense? Qin Feiyang glared at him fiercely. However, Fatso's words reminded him of something. The distance between the 2 halls was too far. With his current speed, it would take him half a day even if he didn't stop and rest. A round trip would take him an entire day. He couldn't afford to waste time. It seemed like besides copying the return formula, the most important thing right now was to earn some gold coins and buy a few image crystals. With the image crystals, it would be much more convenient to contact Ling Yunfei. However, the price of the image crystals gave him a headache. At this moment, Elder, he asked, Brother Luo Zuan attacked the Dan Hall. Other than Feng Cheng, did anyone else get hurt? No. Luo Xiong shook his head and said, looking at the situation, he's still afraid of angering us. When he becomes a 9-star combat emperor, he won't be afraid of us. We'll be afraid of him. Elder, his face was filled with worry. You guys are too slow. I'll bring you guys to fly. He waved his hand, and his battle chi emerged, forming a 3-meter wide barrier that covered everyone. Next, the barrier carried them up into the sky like lightning in the night sky, and they quickly flew towards the Danwang Hall. In less than 100 breaths, a tall stone door entered their line of sight. The stone door was more than 10 meters tall. It was completely black and emitted an ancient aura. On top of it, the 3 big words Danwang Hall were written with iron hooks and silver strokes. The strokes were vigorous and imposing. Behind the stone door, there were groups of palaces. The lowest one was more than 10 meters tall, and the highest one was 50 to 60 meters tall. It was a magnificent sight to behold. Beside the stone door, there was a big hall that was more than 10 meters tall. It had white walls and black glazed roof tiles. It looked simple and unadorned, but it had a solemn aura. On the door there were 3 big words, Reception Hall. Under the lead of Elder, they entered the hall. A middle-aged man in white immediately came forward and cupped his hands. Greetings, Elder he. Elder he nodded. He moved closer to the middle-aged man's ear and whispered a few words. Then he left the reception hall with Luo Xiong. The middle-aged man looked at the 3 of them and smiled faintly. My name is Wang Yu. I'm the Deacon Elder of the Danwang Hall. You can call me Elder Wang or Old Wang. Greetings, Elder Wang. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 bowed. As for calling him Old Wang, it was just a formality. If they really called him that, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. Give me your Dan Hall's identity token, I'll exchange it for the Danwang Hall's identity token for you. Wang Yu led the three of them to a workstation at the side. After changing the identity token, Wang Yu said, Lu Hong, from today onwards, you will stay here as my assistant and receive guests who come to visit. During this period, without my permission, you are not allowed to refine pills in private. The limit is 1 year. Yes. Lu Hong bowed and replied, as an alchemist, there was nothing more painful than not being able to refine pills. However, no matter how unwilling she was, she could only hide it in her heart. Moreover, receiving guests was better than being sent to clean up the place. Wang Yu then looked at Fatso and said, Situ Tianyu, you are in charge of taking care of the herb field. Remember, you are not allowed to cheat, and you are not allowed to embezzle anything. If you are caught, you will be kicked out of the Danwang Hall and will never be hired again. Take care of the herb field? Fatso was stunned. He was overjoyed. This was a lucrative job. He patted his chest and said confidently, Elder, don't worry. Fat Lord will definitely be loyal to his duty and protect every plant in the herb field. Fat Lord? Wang Yu frowned slightly and said, You should change this habit of yours as soon as possible. Otherwise, sooner or later, you will be in big trouble. Fatso scratched his head and said with an embarrassed smile, Fat Lord? No, I understand. I will definitely change. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Fatso's habit had long been ingrained in his bones. It would be difficult to change it. Wang Yu looked at Lu Hong and said, You stay here and watch. I will bring them over. Yes. Lu Hong nodded and looked at Qin Feiyang enviously. Although Wang Yu had not arranged for Qin Feiyang's whereabouts, she could imagine that he would definitely be well taken care of. Follow me. Wang Yu called out to Qin Feiyang and Situ Tianyu, then turned and walked out of the hall. Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked at Lu Hong. He smiled faintly and said, Actually, you being here is also an opportunity, because you can usually come into contact with many important people. Perhaps in the future, I will need to seek your help. Lu Hong was stunned. When Qin Feiyang said this, she really felt that this was a good job. Fatso smiled complacently. Smelly woman, if you need anything in the future, feel free to go to the medicine field to find Fat Lord. But don't come for physiological needs. Fat Lord can't take it. Originally, Lu Hong was quite touched, but when she heard the latter part, her face immediately darkened, and she said angrily, Damn fat pig, I will skin you alive today. Fatso's complexion changed, and he hurriedly slipped away. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He also turned and walked out of the hall. After catching up to Fatso, he asked, Damn Fatso, is Lu Hong really as bad as you said? Fatso waved his hand. Not really. She is just a bit snobbish. Qin Feiyang said, So you are saying that she has an affair with Qingyu and Ji Jin? Fatso laughed. It's all made up by Fat Lord. Although it would occasionally be a bit ambiguous, it can still be considered as a clean body. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. To a woman, nothing is more important than her purity. In the future, you can't casually insult others like this. Fatso thought for a moment and nodded. That's true. In the past, I was indeed a bit willful. I will find an opportunity to apologize to her. After bringing Fatso to the medicine field, Wang Yu led Qin Feiyang to the Danwang Hall's conference hall. Inside the hall, there was no one. You wait here. Don't run around. Leaving behind the sentence, Wang Yu turned and left. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang frowned. Shouldn't he be bringing him to the pill refining room and residence first? Why did he come to the conference hall first? Furthermore, he left him here alone. It felt somewhat strange. Suddenly, a glint flashed across his eyes. Could it be because of the netherworld devil flame? Chapter 126. Tap tap. Finally, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the door. Luo Xiong, Elder He and a dark-skinned old man walked into the hall. The dark-skinned old man was wearing a black robe. He had black hair, black breath, and black skin. He looked like a piece of charcoal. Qin Feiyang looked at them one by one and found that Luo Xiong's expression was not good. The three of them sat on the chairs next to him. Luo Xiong said, "Jiang Haotian, let me introduce you to this old man with skin problems. His name is Jia He, and he is also the Danwang Hall's law-enforcing elder." Fake black? He's obviously real black. I just don't know if his heart is black or not. Qin Feiyang secretly sneered and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Elder Jia." Jia He responded indifferently. There was no smile on his old face, and he looked incomparably cold. "Elder," he said, "Jiang Haotian, do you know why we called you here?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Elder," he said, "I'll be frank. We want the nether devil flame." As expected. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes. What was to come had finally come. Luo Xiong frowned and smiled. "Haotian, the nether devil flame has already recognized Zhua and as its master. You can't control it. It will be troublesome if you keep it by your side. Why don't you give it to them?" "That's right. You know that Lin Han is already coveting the nether devil flame. Although he didn't succeed this time, there will definitely be a next time. It's not safe for you to keep it." "Elder," he said. Qin Feiyang frowned. "Elder," he continued, "I know that you don't want to, but this is the Grand Hall Master's decision. As a disciple of the Danwang Hall, you should obey unconditionally. Of course, we won't mistreat you. From now on, you can read all the recipes in the Danwang Hall. We will also arrange the best alchemy room for you. Furthermore, you will be promoted to a core disciple." "Elder," he offered one enticing condition after another. If it were anyone else, they would definitely agree without hesitation. But in Qin Feiyang's eyes it was useless. He glanced at the three of them and said indifferently, "With this disciple's talent in alchemy, it doesn't seem difficult to become a core disciple, obtain a good alchemy room, and look up those pill recipes." "Elder," he raised his eyebrows and was about to fly into a rage. Luo Xiong said, "Old He, don't be in a hurry to get angry." Although Jiang Haotian's words are a little arrogant, he does have the qualifications to do so. Jia He said expressionlessly, "No matter how talented you are or how high your spiritual power is, without the Danwang Hall's nurturing, it will be difficult for you to achieve anything in the future." Qin Feiyang smiled. This was a blatant threat. If he didn't hand over the nether devil flame today, the Danwang Hall would give up on him. Since it was already like this, he had nothing to worry about. "I'll be honest. The nether devil flame is something that I risked my life to obtain. Although I can't get it to recognize me as its master now, it's only a matter of time. So, it's impossible for me to hand it over." Qin Feiyang looked coldly at the three of them, his attitude unyielding. Jia He's old eyes flashed with a cold light. He said darkly, "Do you know the consequences of doing this?" "Don't threaten me. It's just leaving the Danwang Hall. Do you think that I can't live if I leave the Danwang Hall?" Qin Feiyang met Jia He's gaze without fear. "Don't regret it," Jia He said word by word. His tone was bone-chilling. "Regret?" Qin Feiyang sneered and said indifferently, "Then let's wait and see. We'll see who's the one who regrets it in the end." "Good, very good. Congratulations, you've completely infuriated this elder." Jia He stood up abruptly. His aura surged as he pounced on Qin Feiyang. "Congratulations to all of you for completely infuriating me. I don't want to stay in this rubbish place anymore." Qin Feiyang sneered as he turned around and walked outside. He originally thought that the people of the Danwang Hall would be as kind and reasonable as Luo Xiong, Feng Cheng, and Elder Mo from the Pill Hall. But obviously he was thinking too much. He didn't want to stay in a place like this, no matter how many benefits it gave him. "My Danwang Hall is not a place where you can come and go as you please." Jia He was furious. How dare he call the Danwang Hall a rubbish place? He really didn't know his place. He took a step forward and instantly landed behind Qin Feiyang. His old hand reached out and grabbed Qin Feiyang's arm. Old man Jia, stop! Luo Xiong's expression changed as he hurriedly stood up and shouted. The severity of the situation had far exceeded his expectations. It's useless no matter who comes today. Jia He was furious. He couldn't hear him at all. He saw that Qin Feiyang was about to be captured by him. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang disappeared from the face of the earth without any warning. Jia He's eyes widened in disbelief. Elder, he also stood up abruptly and scanned every corner of the hall. Luo Xiong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. His face was also filled with surprise. He was right in front of him a moment ago, but he disappeared without a trace in an instant. Where did this kid go? Whoosh! Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air again and said indifferently, "Don't waste your time. You can't catch me." How is this possible? Jia He stared at Qin Feiyang without blinking. He couldn't believe it. He came without a shadow and left without a trace. Was this kid a ghost? Qin Feiyang looked up at Luo Xiong and said, "Hall Master, I just came out to ask you one thing. Do you also want the Nether Devil Flame? If I wanted it, I would have already made a move on you on the way here." Luo Xiong sighed deeply and advised, "Hao Qian, leaving the Danwang Hall, you can't move an inch. Give them the Nether Devil Flame. Just treat it as giving me face." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I can agree to anything else, but not the Nether Devil Flame. Thank you for taking care of me these past few months. Also, help me thank Elder Mo finished." He looked at Elder, he and Jia He. "Danwang Hall, remember, I, Zhang Haoyan, will make you regret it for the rest of your life." Suddenly, he roared, his long hair fluttering, as if he was possessed by a demon god. It gave Jia He and Luo Xiong a great sense of oppression. The next moment, he disappeared again. His roar spread in all directions. Who knew how many people were alarmed? What happened? Why is Jiang Lao so angry? Fatso stood in front of a medicinal field. Lu Hong also walked out of the reception hall and looked in the direction of the meeting hall. Her eyes were full of surprise. Shouldn't he be focused on training? Why did he turn hostile instead? Rebel, rebel. Jia He was mad with anger. His face was even darker than before. He glared at Luo Xiong and roared, "This is the person you brought? He is simply an uneducated bastard." Swish! At this time, Qin Feiyang appeared again. However, at this moment he was like a ferocious beast, staring at Jia He. His eyes were as if they were dyed with blood red. Originally, he did not plan to show his face and concentrate on copying the Huan character formula. But he did not expect that Jia He would actually scold him outside. If it was any other scolding, he would not care. But the words uneducated bastard and bastard were absolutely intolerable. "Jia He, listen to me clearly. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I will kill you with my own hands." He smiled sinisterly and disappeared again. But those cold and ferocious words echoed in the hall for a long time, filled with an incomparably strong murderous intent. "Come on, if you have the guts, come and kill me now." Jia He roared, bristling with anger. "Enough!" Luo Xiong suddenly roared. "You dare to yell at me?" Jia He turned to look at him, his old eyes cold and piercing. "Previously in front of the Chief Palace Master, I have been opposing because I know his character too well. He will definitely fall out. Moreover, he snatched the Nether Devil Flame with his own ability. Why should we ask him to hand it over? If we do this, what is the difference between us and bandits? However, you did not listen and insisted that he hand over the Nether Devil Flame. Now it's good. A level 9 mental energy genius, a monster who can refine top-grade pills, was angered away by you. Are you satisfied with this result? Forget it, I don't care anymore. Anyway, I have done my duty. What will happen in the end has nothing to do with me. After taking the pill fire, I will return to Black Bear City." After Luo Xiong finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. "Sigh, Elder," he sighed. "Perhaps this time we have really done wrong. Let's go and see the chief palace master and ask his opinion." Jia He swept his gaze across the hall, filled with anger, and left with Elder He. Inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang closed his eyes and clenched his fists so tightly that his hands were dripping blood. Wolf King at the side watched anxiously. After an unknown period of time, he finally opened his eyes and looked at Wolf King. "White-eyed wolf, do you want to know my true identity?" Wolf King said. "If you want to say it, Brother Wolf will listen. If you don't say it, Brother Wolf won't ask." Qin Feiyang said, "Actually, I am really a prince of the great Qin Empire." Wolf King's huge body trembled, and his eyes also shone brightly. "Among all the princes, I am ranked 14th. So, in the imperial capital, I am called the 14th prince. At that time, my talent was extraordinary. At the age of 10, I had already stepped into the 9-star martial master realm. If there were no accidents, I would be the next emperor of the great Qin Empire." But at this point, Qin Feiyang closed his eyes again, his face full of pain. Wolf King hurriedly said, "If you don't want to remember, then don't. No matter what happens in the future, Brother Wolf will always stand by your side and help you share the burden." "Thank you." Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and looked at it gratefully. He shook his head and said, "I really don't want to recall the past. When I am ready, I will tell you everything. Right now, I can only tell you that the most ruthless royal family." Wolf King's pupils constricted. What exactly happened back then to make him say such a thing? It opened its mouth and laughed sinisterly. "So you have such a great background. No wonder you have so many perfect martial skills. Look, Brother Wolf supports you so much. When you take back the world and become the emperor, shouldn't you also give Brother Wolf a title like the country protector divine beast? Just you wait, dream on." Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. After sorting out his emotions, he began to draw the 5th stroke. The world? He didn't care. Chapter 127. Elder He and Elder He went to the Grand Hall Master for a discussion, but no one knew the outcome. The Grand Hall Master did not appear either. It was very mysterious. Luo Xiong did not leave Yen City immediately after obtaining the alchemy fire. Instead, he went to look for Fatso. Because Fatso was close to Qin Feiyang, he wanted Fatso to help persuade him. After learning about the whole incident, Fatso agreed readily that he would help persuade him. However, as soon as Luo Xiong left, he slipped out of the Danwang Hall and even urged Lu Hong to help spread the news. There was no suspense. The news immediately spread like wildfire in Yen City, causing a huge uproar. In the reception hall, Lu Hong frowned. "Will we harm Jiang Haoyan by doing this?" "No." Fatso waved his hand and smiled mischievously. "We're helping him become famous." Lu Hong said, "But no buts. You've already boarded the pirate ship. It's hard for you to get off." Fatso smiled mischievously. "Bastard, I knew you were up to no good." Lu Hong flew into a rage and slapped him. Fatso quickly dodged. "Aya, don't be like this. You don't know Jiang Laoda. He won't let this matter rest. When he comes out, he'll definitely make a big move and slap the Danwang Hall in the face. We're paving the way for him now." Fatso said seriously. Paving the way. Lu Hong was stunned and puzzled. Once this matter spreads, everyone will definitely know about it. Wouldn't it be more explosive and effective to slap people in the face like this? Fatso sneered. Lu Hong's face twitched when she heard this. She looked at Fatso strangely and reminded him, "Don't forget, you're also a disciple of the Danwang Hall now. TSK. Fatso's face was full of disdain. If the Danwang Hall is filled with such shameless people, then Fat Lord might as well roam the world with Jiang Laoda. You have the courage, but I don't. Lu Hong shook her head. Fatso said disdainfully, useless. Fat Lord, let me tell you something. Following Jiang Laoda is more promising than following Danwang Hall. Keep bragging. Lu Hong rolled her eyes. Blow. Fatso was stunned. He shook his head and said, Woman, you really don't have any eyesight at all. Jiang Laoda's dagger and the treasure that can hide anywhere, are they ordinary things? Lu Hong's pupils shrank. After being reminded by Fatso, she remembered something very important. When they were at the Eagle Claw Peak, they hid in the treasure, but Zhuan, who was outside, didn't notice them at all. This was enough to explain. The treasure was even more powerful than an 8-star combat emperor. How could the person who owned such a treasure be an ordinary person? Fat Lord has said everything that needs to be said. It's up to you to decide what to do. However, Fat Lord, I sincerely advise you not to betray Jiang Laoda. You know Jiang Laoda's methods. The consequences, I don't need Fat Lord to say it. You know it very well. Fatso grinned and turned to leave. Lu Hong also returned to her seat. She lowered her head and pondered. After daybreak, Ling Yunfei also received the news. He was furious on the spot. Bastard! Qin Feiyong had painstakingly snatched the nether devil flame. What reason did those old bastards of the Danwang Hall have to ask him to hand it over? How could there be such a good thing in the world? No, I have to seek justice for Qin Feiyong. He hurriedly left the cultivation room, but was stopped by Feng Ling Air, who had just arrived. After closing the stone door, Feng Ling Air said in a low voice, You can't interfere in this matter. Why? Ling Yunfei raised his eyebrows. Because this is the rule. The other forces are not allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of the 4 major forces. If you go now, the Danwang Hall has every reason to kill you. Feng Ling Air said. Then, do you want me to sit here and worry? Ling Yunfei said angrily. You and Qin Feiyong have known each other for so long. Don't you know him? He won't do things that he isn't sure of. Since he has decided to turn hostile, he must have thought of a way out. What you need to do now is to cultivate quietly. Don't go and cause trouble for him. Feng Ling Air said. In the ancient castle, Qin Feiyong was very distressed. The further he progressed in the return formula, the longer it would take. He estimated that the 5th stroke would take at least 3 months. With his talent, his previous foundation, and the potential mark, he could break through a small realm in less than 3 months. In other words, the return formula could not help him speed up. Instead, it slowed him down. However, when he thought of the power of the return formula, he was very eager to have it immediately. Therefore, although he was very distressed, he gritted his teeth and continued to copy. As expected, 3 months later, the 5th stroke was successfully copied. His cultivation also increased to a 6-star martial master. At this time, the strength of his punch was equivalent to the strength of 6 brute elephants. With the perfect skill, it was equivalent to the strength of 10 brute elephants. In other words, his strength had exceeded that of a 9-star martial master. If it was a 9-star martial master who had not mastered the skill, he could kill him with 1 punch. In about 5 months, I will be 16 years old. A 16-year-old 6-star martial master is considered a genius in Yen City, but in the capital it is far from enough. Qin Feiyong muttered to himself. There was no joy of breaking through at all, because, in his opinion, this strength was simply insignificant. He had to continue to become stronger, and fast. He continued to copy the 6th stroke. As long as he successfully mastered the return formula, he could concentrate on improving his cultivation. By then, his speed would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. However, on this day, Fatso sneaked into the conference hall like a thief. Seeing that there was no one around, he whispered, "Jiang Lauda, Fat Lord knows you are hiding here." He came out when he heard it. "What are you doing?" After a while, Qin Feiyang appeared in the conference hall and looked at him in confusion. Fatso's eyes lit up. He hurried over and asked, "It's been 3 months. Why haven't you taken action?" "Action?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fatso said, "Don't you want to take revenge on the Danwang Hall?" "You know?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Yes." Fatso nodded and said with a sinister smile, as early as that day, Luo Xiong had already told Fat Lord and asked Fat Lord to help persuade him. He didn't think that Fat Lord was that kind of person without loyalty. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. To be honest, Fatty really didn't have any good points other than being loyal. Suddenly he thought of something and said, "I want to ask you to do me a favor." Fatso said unhappily, "Don't be so polite. Just say it." Qin Feiyang took out the prescription of the red fire colored glass pill and handed it to Fatso. He said, "Help me find these medicinal materials." Fatso looked carefully and said with a smile, "Except for the red fire colored glass tree and the fire ginseng, the field has all the other medicinal materials. How many portions do you want?" "No fire ginseng?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Although the fire ginseng is not as rare as the red fire colored glass tree, it is not common. "I'm afraid only the treasure pavilion has it," Fatso said. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and nodded. "Okay, I'll think of a way to get the fire ginseng. Get me 3 portions of the other medicinal materials." Because there were only 3 leaves of the red fire colored glass tree, he could only refine 3 red fire colored glass pills. Fatso nodded without hesitation. "Okay, but you have to find an opportunity, because the field is not only guarded by Fat Lord, but also by a deacon elder. He keeps a close watch." "No." Fatso seemed to suddenly think of something and said in surprise, "Do you have the leaves of the red fire colored glass tree?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, "Does Ling Yunfei know about my current situation?" Fatso looked at him in disbelief and said, "Fat Lord deliberately spread the news. Of course he knows. More than 2 months ago, he sent a letter saying that he can't intervene. He hopes you can understand." Qin Feiyang said, "What about the letter?" Fatso said, "Fat Lord has destroyed it." Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Well done. Jia, Ahei, Elder He and Grand Hall Master, are there any movements?" Fatso shook his head and said, "No, they don't seem to care about this at all." "It's not that they don't care. They just want to compete with me in patience." Qin Feiyang sneered. Clatter. At this time, a series of footsteps sounded. Someone was coming. Fatso's face changed greatly and hurriedly said, "What should we do? If they find out that Fat Lord sneaked into the great council hall, they will definitely not forgive me. What are you panicking for?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him, grabbed Fatso, and went to the castle. As soon as the two disappeared, 2 old men walked into the great council hall one after another. It was Elder He and Jia He. Jia He sat down on a chair and said angrily, "This little bastard, how long is he going to hide?" Elder He smiled confidently and said, "Don't worry, he will come out sooner or later and take the initiative to apologize to us. He will also hand over the nether devil flame and beg us to take him in." Jia He sneered and said, "At that time, even if he begs, I won't forgive him. I will throw him into a pig cage and keep him there for 10 days to half a month." Elder He nodded and said, "We have to teach him a lesson. We have to let him know that even if he is a monster in the alchemy world, he will still have to behave himself in front of the Danwang Hall." The 2 talked about a few more trivial matters and then left the great council hall. Whoosh! Soon, Qin Feiyang and Fatso appeared out of thin air. Fatso said, "They are indeed trying to test your patience." Qin Feiyang asked, The Danwang Hall also has pig cages? Fatso said, the Pill Hall's pig cages are modeled after the Danwang Hall. Don't you think so? Immediately, Qin Feiyang clenched his hands. He actually wanted to throw him into the pig cage. This Jia Hei's heart was even darker than a person's. He said to Fatso, you go back first. What about you? Fatso asked. Qin Feiyang sneered and said, you have waited for so long. Of course I won't disappoint you. Fatso's eyes lit up and asked, what do you want to do? You will know very soon. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a shocking cold light. Then Fat Lord will wait for your good news. Fatso chuckled and turned to leave quickly. His face was also full of expectation. I didn't plan to make a move so early, but you can only blame yourselves for not knowing the situation. Now you will regret it, Qin Feiyang mumbled. Chapter 128. Is he Jiang Haoyan? That's right. It's him. He's been missing for 3 months. I thought he had left Yan City. I didn't expect him to still be here. The moment Qin Feiyang appeared, the Danwang Hall exploded. The news quickly spread to Jia Hei and Elder He's ears. Why aren't you hiding anymore? I thought you had some backbone. I didn't expect you to be such a wretch. Hand over the nether devil flame and face the wall for half a month. Then I'll let bygones be bygones. The two immediately rushed over and stood in front of Qin Feiyang, mocking and ridiculing him. However, Qin Feiyang only glanced at them indifferently before walking past them. He didn't even look back as he left. Seeing Qin Feiyang's attitude, the two immediately blew their beards and glared at him. Where do you think you're going? Jia Hei shouted coldly. Qin Feiyang remained silent. No, he's walking towards the door. Is he leaving the Danwang Hall? Elder, he was surprised. Leaving? Jia Hei was furious. After waiting for 3 months, not only did he not come to apologize, he even wanted to leave the Danwang Hall. This was ridiculous. Elder, he shouted. Jiang Haotian, if you dare to step out of the Danwang Hall's door, you're no longer a disciple of the Danwang Hall. You better think about it seriously. Qin Feiyang still didn't say anything. When he reached the door of the Danwang Hall, he walked out without hesitation. Elder, he could no longer stay calm. He shouted angrily, Bastard, are you trying to rebel? Lu Hong also walked out from the reception hall and advised, Jiang Haotian, let's talk nicely. There's no need to make a scene like this. Jiang Haotian? Wow, I finally see him in person. Let's go take a look. Let's see if he has 3 heads and 6 arms. The passers-by on the street immediately surrounded them. Their eyes were filled with curiosity as they discussed among themselves. Qin Feiyang smiled at Lu Hong and turned to look at the crowd. He smiled faintly. Excuse me. You can still smile? The crowd was stunned. Didn't they see Elder He and Jia Hei flip out? Hearing about him couldn't compare to meeting. This kid's guts. The crowd in front of Qin Feiyang quickly parted and made a path for him. Qin took a step forward. From now onwards, no. From 3 months ago, I have nothing to do with the Danwang Hall. From now onwards, no. Since 3 months from now, Qin Feiyang then took out his identity token. What are you doing? Seeing this, Elder, he said angrily, since I've already left the Danwang Hall, there's no need for this thing to exist. Qin Feiyang clenched his fist. With a crack, the token was crushed into pieces. This meant that he had officially left the Danwang Hall. His action caused an uproar. Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. Others dreamt of entering the Pill Emperor Hall. Yet this young man didn't even hesitate to shatter his identity medallion. Was the Danwang Hall really so unbearable in his eyes? Elder, he and Jia Hei were shaking with anger. No one had ever dared to be so arrogant in front of the Danwang Hall. No disciple had ever voluntarily left the Danwang Hall. Usually it was the Danwang Hall that kicked out disciples they didn't like. Today, however, it was the other way around. This kid's attitude toward the Danwang Hall was like facing a pile of dog poop. Extreme disdain and extreme disgust. It was a slap to the Danwang Hall's face. Do you want to know where I'm going? I'm going to the Martial Imperial Hall. Those who want to know if I can enter the Martial Imperial Hall can come and join in the fun. Qin Feiyang said without turning his head. What? To the Martial Imperial Hall. Isn't this embarrassing for the Danwang Hall? He must be doing this on purpose. I want to go and see what he's capable of. Why is he so confident? I'm going too. Most of the people followed Qin Feiyang. Those who didn't go looked at the Danwang Hall playfully. If this kid really did enter the Martial Imperial Hall, they would lose not only a monstrous disciple and another devil flame, but also face and dignity. The Martial Imperial Hall would be the biggest winner. Jia He, an elder, he finally realized that this matter had blown out of proportion and was already out of their control. The two of them flew into the air to discuss with the Grand Hall Master. Only the Grand Hall Master had the ability to settle this matter. Not long after receiving the Grand Hall Master's instructions, the two of them flew into the air again and rushed to the Martial Imperial Hall. The Martial Imperial Hall. In a large hall, a middle-aged man in purple sat on the main seat. His eyebrows were as sharp as swords, and his body was tall and straight. There were two other people beside him. One of them was Elder Wan. The other person was a beautiful woman. She was wearing a purple and gold dress, and her long black hair was tied up. She looked elegant and had an extraordinary temperament. The man in purple looked at the two of them and asked, "You've also received the news, right?" Elder Wan and the beautiful woman nodded. The man in purple said, "Then tell me what you think." "I'll go first. To be honest, when I went to pick them up that night, I wanted to invite Jiang Haoyan to join the Martial Imperial Hall, but Elder, he was there, so I didn't say anything. Now that we have such a good opportunity, we naturally can't reject this kid." Elder Wan smiled. "I think so too. Not only is this kid monstrously talented in alchemy, but I heard from Ling and Yun Fei that he's also outstanding in martial arts. We have no reason to reject such an all-round talent." The beautiful woman also expressed her opinion. The violet-robed man nodded. "I know this as well. But this young man obviously wants to borrow the power of our Martial King Hall to make things difficult for the Pill Emperor Hall. If we allow him to join us, I'm afraid the Pill Emperor Hall would be extremely unhappy." The beautiful woman said unhappily, "To put it bluntly, you just hate him for using our Martial Imperial Hall." The man in purple's expression froze, and he smiled bitterly. "It's fine as long as you know it. Why do you have to point it out?" The beautiful woman rolled her eyes and shook her head. "So be it. It's worth it to get such a talent." At this moment, Elder, he and Jia He descended from the sky and rushed into the hall. "What are you doing here?" The man in purple frowned. "Elder," he said, "the Grand Hall Master asked us to come. He wants you to ignore Jiang Haoyan." The man in purple was stunned, and he sneered. "Do you think that's possible?" "Elder," he said, "the Grand Hall Master already guessed that you would do this. If you insist on snatching him, we can only report it to the state government and let the state government make a decision." Jia He added, "Jiang Haojian's talent in alchemy far surpasses his talent in martial arts. I believe that the final result will belong to our Danwang Hall." The man in purple laughed. "You guys are really unscrupulous. But since you want him to stay in the Danwang Hall so badly, why do you have to drive him away? Don't you think it's troublesome? How could we have known that he has such a strong temper?" Elder, he revealed a helpless expression. The beautiful woman sneered. "Now that things have come to this, it'll be difficult to make him change his mind." Jia He said disdainfully, "Don't worry about that. As long as he hits a wall in the Martial Imperial Hall and has nowhere to go, he'll naturally go to the Danwang Hall to beg us." The beautiful woman sneered. "Good plan. I'm just afraid that it'll backfire when the time comes. Jia He said, we know what we're doing. You don't have to worry about it. The beautiful woman frowned and looked at the man in purple. After a moment of silence, the man in purple nodded. All right, as you wish. Elder Wan, I'll leave this matter to you. Me. Elder Wan's old face twitched, and he shook his head. I won't be the bad guy. Moreover, if I go, Ling and Yun Fei will hate me to death. Then I'll go, the beautiful woman said helplessly. When Qin Feiyang arrived at the Martial Imperial Hall, it was already afternoon. The layout of the Martial Imperial Hall was similar to that of the Danwang Hall. In the reception hall, the beautiful woman had been waiting for a long time. However, when she walked out and saw the densely packed crowd behind Qin Feiyang, she immediately frowned. It seemed that this kid wouldn't stop until he caused a storm in the city. She looked at Qin Feiyang and shook her head. Jiang Haoqian, the Martial Imperial Hall can't take you in. You should find another place. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Soon he figured it out. It must be the Danwang Hall behind this. The corners of Qin Wintian's lips curled up as he shook his head. Who would have thought that the Martial King Hall would actually listen to the Pill Emperor Hall? What a joke! What's the difference between such a place and the Pill Emperor Hall? The beautiful woman frowned. I don't need you to rush me. I'll leave immediately. But from today onwards, the Martial Imperial Hall will become a laughing stock. Qin Feiyang laughed and walked away. The crowd in front also automatically opened up a path for him. The beautiful woman frowned and said, Wait, it's not impossible to enter the Martial Imperial Hall, but you have to pass 2 tests. Qin Feiyang stopped, turned around and asked, What tests? The first test, strength. The second test, actual combat. The beautiful woman said. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The beautiful woman said, Throw a punch at me with all your strength. Then I'll offend you. Heart-lock killing fist. Qin Feiyang clenched his fist and rushed in front of the beautiful woman like a wild bull. He covered his fist with true qi and threw a punch. The beautiful woman only stretched out her hand and blocked Qin Feiyang's fist. However, her face instantly changed, and she said in surprise, The strength of 10 barbarian elephants. Have you broken through to a 6-star martial master? Qin Feiyang stopped and smiled. I just broke through not long ago. Gasp! The beautiful woman secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. Some time ago, she asked Ling Yunfei about Qin Feiyang's situation. Not long before he left Black Bear City, he broke through to a 5-star martial master. In other words, he only used 3 months to raise his cultivation by a small level. With such speed, even in the Martial Imperial Hall, he would be a top genius. Chapter 129. Qin Feiyang asked, Senior, did I pass the first test? The beautiful woman came back to her senses and nodded. Pass. Now, let's begin the second test. 6-star martial master, step forward. Behind the beautiful woman, there were many disciples of the martial arts hall. As soon as the voice sounded, a dozen people immediately stepped forward. Gang fight. Qin Feiyang frowned. He looked at them one by one. There were men and women, tall and short, fat and thin. But without exception, they were all very young and had an extraordinary temperament. The beautiful woman said, Whoever can defeat him will be rewarded with 30,000 gold coins. Let me. A young man in black stepped forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said, I'm afraid one is not enough. Arrogant, the young man in black roared. Boom! His aura burst out and his true qi surged. He slapped at Qin Feiyang. Reckless ox fist. Qin Feiyang did not hesitate to use a martial technique and punched the young man in black. Wah! The young man in black smashed into the crowd and spat out a mouthful of blood. Lying on the ground, he glared at Qin Feiyang and roared, "Bastard, you actually used a martial technique. You're too despicable." Qin Feiyang said lightly, "No matter who you fight, as long as it's a battle, you have to go all out. Didn't the martial arts hall teach you this?" The young man in black still wanted to say something. The beautiful woman shouted, "Next!" A woman in red walked out. She was about 20 years old. She was tall and had exquisite facial features. She was quite stunning. "I'll defeat you in one move." However, she was extremely strong. She pointed at Qin Feiyang and was extremely cold and arrogant. "Come on, don't talk nonsense," Qin Feiyang said calmly with one hand behind his back. Phantom palm. The woman in red waved her palm and true qi surged in her palm. For a moment, in front of Qin Feiyang, 3 palms appeared. The palm wind whistled and sand flew. This martial technique could confuse the opponent's eyes and take advantage of the situation to kill the opponent in one move. It was hard to distinguish between real and fake. However, Qin Feiyang didn't look at the 3 palms. Instead, he stared at the ground. What is he doing? Everyone was puzzled. Reckless ox fist. Just as the 3 palms were about to land on Qin Feiyang's face, he suddenly punched out and hit the palms of the woman in red. Bang! Both of them took half a step back. You can actually see the red-clothed woman was bewildered. She found it hard to believe. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "No matter how fast you are, you will still cast a shadow on the ground. Remember to find a place where there is no sun the next time you use this martial technique." The woman in red was extremely shocked. This person was actually able to see through the flaws of the phantom fist at the first meeting. Wasn't his eyesight a little too shocking? Qin Feiyang said, "You are no match for me. Back down. Otherwise, don't say that I bullied a woman." The red-clothed woman's eyes turned cold as she shouted, "Defeat me first, and then you can be arrogant." Illusion extinguishing palm. At this moment, 9 palms actually appeared in front of Qin Feiyang's eyes. Even if there were shadows on the ground, it was impossible to tell which palm was the real one. This was because the speed was simply too fast. It was at least several times faster than before. Qin Feiyang only took a glance and felt his eyes turning sour. "Kid, let's see how you will break this move of mine." The red-clothed woman rushed forward. Her 9 palms were aimed at Qin Feiyang with an earth-shattering momentum. Qin Feiyang took a closer look and said in realization, "So it's a perfect martial technique. No wonder you are so confident. Since you know, then surrender," the red-clothed woman shouted. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes slightly. The illusion extinguishing palm was extremely fast. Martial artists of the same realm couldn't tell which one was real and which one was fake. This was indeed a top-notch, perfect martial technique. He believed that this woman should also be a core disciple of the martial imperial hall. With her strength, she was already strong enough to dominate the same realm. But for Qin Feiyang, who had hundreds of perfect martial techniques, such strength was far from enough. The 9 palms were menacing. The shocking palm wind was like a sharp blade, cutting Qin Feiyang's face, causing a stinging pain. But he didn't retreat half a step. His eyes were as calm as water. "You lost." The red-clothed woman had already arrived in front of Qin Feiyang with a victorious smile on her face. "Is that so?" Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth with a trace of ridicule. Tiger binding hand. His right hand reached out like lightning, like an eagle claw. It broke through layers of illusions and grabbed the red-clothed woman's wrist. How could this be? The red-clothed woman stopped and looked at Qin Feiyang, who was close at hand. Her face was full of confusion. The group of martial imperial hall disciples beside her also had a face of disbelief. The illusion extinguishing palm was the most powerful martial technique of the martial imperial hall. No matter who the opponent was, as long as their cultivation was the same, the illusion extinguishing palm would always be invincible. However, at this moment, how could it be so easily broken by this person? Was this a dream? Qin Feiyang said, "Actually, you haven't displayed the true power of the illusion extinguishing palm." The red-clothed woman was startled. The group of Martial Imperial Hall disciples also had a face of confusion. As for the beautiful woman, her eyes were emitting rays of light. "I judged it from your strength. Your current strength seems to be the strength of 10 barbarian elephants, but in fact, it's still a bit away from that. There's no problem with your cultivation. Then there's only one reason. You haven't practiced the illusion extinguishing palm to perfection." Qin Feiyang said. The red-clothed woman looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. After a long time, she lowered her head and said, "I've lost." Qin Feiyang let go of his hand and said, "What you lack is not proficiency but actual combat. If you're free, go outside the city and fight with the beasts. It won't take long for you to display the full power of the illusion extinguishing palm. Of course, if you think of yourself as a delicate princess, then you can ignore my words," he added. After seeing this, everyone's expression became strange. Was this still a trial? He was clearly an experienced teacher who was teaching his disciples. The beautiful woman's heart was burning with passion. He was able to see through the weakness of the illusion palm and find the weakness of the red-clothed woman. Most importantly, this kid was only 15 years old. That woman was already 20 years old. There was a difference of 5 years. At such a young age, he had such a clear understanding of martial skills. He was simply a genius in martial arts. Elder, he and Jiahe were currently standing in front of the window of the reception hall. They had witnessed the entire process with their own eyes and were left speechless. This kid's martial talent was definitely not weaker than his pill alchemy talent. This was troublesome, because they could see that the beautiful woman was tempted. The beautiful woman suddenly turned her head and looked at the 6-star martial masters who had just stepped forward. She shouted, "All of you attack together!" "What? Attack together?" "There are a total of 12 6-star martial masters. Isn't this clearly bullying Jiang Haoyan?" The crowd was shocked. The 12 people were also astonished. The beautiful woman said, "If you defeat him, each of you will be rewarded 100,000 gold coins. 100,000! Then what are we waiting for? Attack!" The 12 people immediately rushed toward Qin Feiyang. Moreover, none of them showed mercy and used the illusion extinguishing palm at the first moment. The after-images of hundreds of palms were like raging waves beating the shore, attacking Qin Feiyang from all directions. All the escape routes are blocked. Those 12 people are also the core disciples of the Danwang Hall. Jiang Haoyan should be at his wits' end. Defeat is inevitable, but even if he loses, it will be a glorious loss. That's true. The crowd was discussing. Defeat? Qin Feiyang sneered inwardly. Boom! He abruptly stomped on the ground and leaped high into the air, landing behind one of the men. That person was shocked and quickly turned around. However, just as he turned around, Qin Feiyang pointed a finger at his right shoulder. That person screamed as a bloody hole appeared on his shoulder and blood gushed out. What? He seriously injured one person in an instant. Look, there's something wrong with his index finger. The crowd looked carefully and found that Qin Feiyang's index finger had turned into ice. That's right, it was the ice crystal finger. At the same time, the remaining 11 people were also shocked. They quickly turned around and continued to attack Qin Feiyang. Even if I don't use the smoke-shifting steps, I can still finish you off. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and instantly turned into a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus, fighting with the 11 people. Tiger binding hand. Wind thunder palm, ice crystal finger, heart-locking fist. He casually waved his hand and pointed at them. They were all perfect martial skills. At this moment, every nerve and cell in his body became incomparably sensitive. He didn't even need to turn around to feel the situation behind him. Every time he attacked, there was no extra movement. It was clean and neat. Moreover, he never missed. Every time he attacked, one person would definitely be seriously injured and fall to the ground. This was his battle instinct. Qin Feiyang had completely entered battle mode. Although there was a sea of people around, at this moment it was dead silent. Everyone's mouth was open and their eyes were wide open, filled with shock. One had to know. The strength of the core disciples of the martial imperial palace was enough to dominate those of the same realm. However, the 12 of them together couldn't do anything to Jiang Haoqian. The beautiful woman's hands were tightly clenched together. Her eyes were shining like 2 bright moons. She had a high cultivation level and could see at a glance that Qin Feiyang didn't use his brain to think about each of his moves. They were completely controlled by his instincts. This kind of battle instinct could only be slowly cultivated through endless killing and the baptism of blood. In other words, this kid had already been through hundreds of battles. When danger approached, he didn't even need to use his eyes to see. His body could feel it. As for the core disciples of the martial imperial palace, although they had daily training, they had never experienced a life and death battle. They were 2 completely different types of people. There was no comparison at all. More importantly, she observed and found that this kid had no less than 4 perfect martial skills. This made her feel incredible, because even the martial imperial palace only had 1 perfect martial skill. Bang, bang, bang. After 10 breaths, the 11 core disciples fell to the ground one after another, groaning in pain. At this moment, they looked at Qin Feiyang with only fear in their eyes. Then they looked at Qin Feiyang. He only suffered some minor injuries. Phew! He let out a long breath and glanced at the core disciples. He raised his head to look at the beautiful woman and said, "I don't want to continue this boring game." The beautiful woman took a deep breath and nodded. "For you, this is indeed just a boring game." Everyone was dumbfounded. Such an exciting battle, and he said it was boring? Qin Feiyang asked, "Did I pass the second test?" "Yes." The beautiful woman nodded and said, "The entrance of the martial imperial palace is right beside you. You can enter at any time." "I don't agree." Elder He Jia He, how could they sit still? They hurriedly ran out of the reception hall and began to panic. Chapter 130. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the 2, his face full of sarcasm. And he didn't hide it. The surrounding people's eyes also became playful. The atmosphere here was a little strange. "What do you mean?" Elder He and Qin Feiyang came over and looked at the beautiful woman with questioning eyes. The beautiful woman said indifferently, "You saw it very clearly. His martial arts talent is no less than his alchemy talent. My martial imperial hall has no reason to help you." Elder He said, "But you promised us before. As the ruler of the martial imperial hall, shouldn't you keep your word?" The beautiful woman laughed and said, "We did promise you, but who knew he was so cute?" Jia He's eyes darkened and shouted, "You don't say I'm unrighteous. It's you who didn't know how to cherish talent. If it weren't for your insatiable greed and forcing him to hand over the nether devil flame, would he have left the Danwang Hall? In the end, you asked for it." The beautiful woman didn't hide her sarcasm. Jia He stared at the beautiful woman. His hands clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Obviously, his anger had reached its peak. "Sigh." Elder, he sighed deeply and turned to look at Qin Feiyang with a complicated expression. "We were wrong in the past. I hope you can forgive us." Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted and said indifferently, "I'm just an insignificant nobody. How would I dare to let Elder He apologize personally? Elder He's expression stiffened and he forced a smile. Follow us back to the Danwong Hall first. As for other matters, we can discuss them later. Discuss? So you haven't given up? Interesting. The dignified Danwong Hall not only doesn't protect the interests of its disciples, but also relies on its power to exploit them. What's the difference between this and a bandit's nest? Qin Feiyang mocked. The anger in his heart grew stronger and stronger. These old bastards were the most shameless people he had ever seen. Elder He's face was gloomy. In his opinion, being able to go this far for a junior was already giving him enough face. However, the other party was unforgiving and spoke rudely again and again. Not only was this trampling on his dignity, it was also an insult to the Danwong Hall. Are you very angry and want to kill me? Qin Feiyang sneered. Elder He and Elder He did not answer, but the look in their eyes said it all. Before scheming against others, you have to take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror to see if you have the ability. Although you are very strong, even an idiot would be able to see through your thoughts with a single glance. A competition of patience? You want me to apologize to you and beg you to take me in. Did you really think that the Danwong Hall was so powerful that I wouldn't be able to survive if I left the Danwong Hall? Don't think too highly of yourself. The sun will still rise no matter who you leave. I won't go back to the Danwong Hall. That place is disgusting. Do you remember what I said 3 months ago? Let's see who will regret it in the future. Now this is just the beginning. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them mockingly, then turned to the beautiful woman and cupped his hands. Please forgive me. After that he turned and left. The beautiful woman was stunned. The surrounding crowd was also shocked. Didn't he pass the test? Why didn't he enter the Martial Imperial Hall? So he was just using the Martial Imperial Hall to slap the Danwong Hall's face? Was all of this just a farce that he had planned? At first, everyone thought that the final winner would be the Martial Imperial Hall. However, the result was the Martial Imperial Hall did not get any benefits at all. He himself was the biggest winner. Not only did he show his potential and talent to attract the attention of the Martial Imperial Hall, but he also put the Danwong Hall in an awkward position. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. This person's brain was really not simple. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was about to enter the crowd, the beautiful woman hurriedly said, Jiang Haoqian, if you join the Martial Imperial Hall now, the Grand Hall Master, Elder One, and I will immediately help you control the Nether Devil Flame. Elder He and Jia He suddenly turned their heads and glanced at the beautiful woman, because the beautiful woman's action was undoubtedly to put the Danwong Hall in an even more awkward position. What are you looking at? This is the Martial Imperial Hall. Do you want to fight? The beautiful woman raised her eyebrows and a bone-piercing cold aura emitted from her body. The two of them were as calm as water. They thought that no matter how big the commotion was, they would be able to control the situation. Only now did they realize, as early as 3 months ago, this matter was already out of their control. What should they do now? How could they save all of this? This person already hated them to the bone. What could they do to change his mind? At this moment, the two of them fell into hesitation. At the same time, endless regret surged uncontrollably like a tide, drowning his entire soul. It looks like they're regretting it now. Nonsense. Why don't you think about it? How valuable is an alchemist who can refine top-grade pills? Moreover, he's also a martial arts genius. Who wouldn't regret losing such a monstrous talent? Actually, the Danwong Hall shouldn't have tried to steal the Nether Devil Flame from the beginning. That's right. The right thing to do would have been to help him control the Nether Devil Flame like the Martial Imperial Hall. This way, all of this wouldn't have happened. On the contrary, Jiang Haoqian would be deeply grateful and would pledge his loyalty to the Danwong Hall. They're both in power in the county of Swallow, but why is there such a big difference? The crowd discussed in low voices. And when these discussions landed in the ears of Elder He and Elder He, it made their faces and ears flush red, and they were so ashamed that they could not show their faces. At the same time, when Qin Feiyang heard the beautiful woman's words, he stopped in his tracks and pondered. The beautiful woman smiled and said, "If you can't make up your mind right now, you can stay at the Martial Imperial Hall and slowly think about it. This IQ is simply crushing the Danwang Hall." The crowd sighed. Not rushing, not rushing, not putting on airs, and giving the other party time to think was the greatest respect to others. Once Jiang Haotia nodded and stayed at the Martial Imperial Hall. Joining the Martial Imperial Hall would be a done deal. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the beautiful woman. "Senior, why don't we work together?" "Work together?" The beautiful woman was stunned and asked, "How?" Qin Feiyang said, "Help me control the nether devil flame, and I'll refine supreme, great pills for you. However, you have to provide the materials and give me a certain amount of compensation." The beautiful woman's eyes lit up. "No." Elder He and Jia He shouted at the same time. If this matter was settled, the profits of the Danwang Hall would be greatly reduced. They definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, "This is my business. What does it have to do with you?" The two of them were like mutes, unable to speak of their bitterness. Qin Feiyang disdainfully looked at the beautiful woman and asked, "Senior, what do you think?" The beautiful woman nodded and said, "All right, I agree to work with you. As for the compensation, we'll discuss it in the conference hall." "No problem." Qin Feiyang smiled and turned around to walk towards the beautiful woman. But at this time, Elder He stepped in front of him and asked, "Could it be that there is no way to turn this matter around?" "Then tell me, if you were me, what would you do? Would you return to the Dan Hall?" Qin Feiyang asked back, "As long as everything is over, I will return to the Dan Hall." Elder He said, "I admire you, but I'm sorry I'm not as magnanimous as you. I'm a very stingy person." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he stepped forward and walked past Elder He. "I don't believe that I can't deal with a brat like you." Jia He couldn't take it anymore. He stretched out his hand and turned it into an eagle's claw, grabbing towards Qin Feiyang's neck. The beautiful woman's expression changed. She hurriedly stepped forward and protected Qin Feiyang behind her. She said coldly, "Old Jia, where do you think this is? How dare you act so presumptuously?" "Old Jia, stop it." Elder He also hurriedly shouted. Jia He raised his eyebrows and stopped his hand in the air. He glanced at the beautiful woman and then looked at Qin Feiyang. His eyes were as sharp as a blade, extremely sharp. Qin Feiyang walked out from behind the beautiful woman and looked at Jia He without fear. He said indifferently, "Give me 5 years and I will definitely step on you." Is this a declaration of war? The crowd was shocked. He dared to declare war against the Battle Emperor. Was he borrowing courage from the heavens? "Haha, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I'll give you 10 years. 10 years later, if you can defeat me, I'll kneel down and let you do whatever you want of me. If you can't, I'll cut you into pieces." Jia He was startled, but he then burst out laughing in disdain. "Then we'll wait and see." Qin Feiyang replied calmly and walked straight into the Martial Imperial Hall. The beautiful woman frowned and quickly followed behind. After seeing Qin Feiyang disappear from the Martial Imperial Hall, Elder He said angrily, "Old Jia, why are you so stupid? Now that you've caused such a scene, there's no way to turn things around." Jia He said angrily, "Can't you see that he's determined to leave the Danwang Hall? Even so, you shouldn't deepen your hatred. He can refine pills of the highest quality. Do you know what this means? If you don't, I'll tell you now. His future achievements will be greater than ours. He might even have the chance to enter the imperial capital." Elder He roared. "The imperial capital. Jia, Hei's eyes trembled. The imperial capital was a legendary place that countless people yearned for. Even he, the law enforcement elder of the Danwang Hall, could only look up to the imperial capital. Elder, he continued, although the reason why he left the Pill Emperor Hall was because we forced him to hand over the Nether Devil Flame, the biggest reason was because of your attitude back then. What did you say to him? Uneducated bastard. Didn't you see his reaction when he heard those words? He couldn't wait to kill you on the spot. Sigh, I shouldn't have brought you along. Elder, he shook his head and sighed regretfully. Isn't he an uneducated bastard? Jia He sneered. You, Elder, he glared at him, but swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He let out a long sigh and looked extremely haggard. Since it's already like this, it's useless to say more. Let's go back and ask the Grand Hall Master. He might have a way. After saying that, he flew into the sky and disappeared without a trace. Genius! No matter how powerful a genius is, as long as he hasn't grown up, he's nothing to worry about. I'd like to see if you can hide in the Martial Imperial Hall for the rest of your life. Jia He turned his head and looked at the Martial Imperial Hall. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he turned into a ray of divine light and flew away. The main character had left. Those who wanted to join in the fun naturally didn't stay and dispersed. Chapter 131. This time, the Danwang Hall didn't just lose a disciple. It also lost its reputation, image, and people's hearts. This was because they used their power to threaten their disciples and steal their things. This kind of bandit behavior was disdainful. This matter would become a stain on the Danwang Hall's reputation that would be difficult to erase. Most importantly, after this incident, the disciples of the Danwang Hall would be wary of the higher-ups. After all, no one wanted to have their hard-earned things snatched away by someone else. This was the chain effect. Martial Imperial Hall. Under the guidance of the beautiful woman, Qin Feiyong walked into the meeting hall. He saw Elder Wan and a man in purple sitting in front of a tea table. They were drinking tea and chatting. The beautiful woman frowned and said angrily, I offended Old Man He and Old Man Zhao outside, and you guys are leisurely drinking tea? Isn't this too much? He, Elder Wan, raised his head and laughed. It's better for you to offend them alone than to offend all of us. The man in purple said, Yeah, Yen City is only so big. We can't have a complete falling out with the Danwang Hall. The beautiful woman rolled her eyes at the two of them and led Qin Feiyong over. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Elder Wan. Elder Wan nodded and stood up with a smile. Little guy, the disciples have told us about your performance outside. I didn't expect you to be an all-around monster. Elder, you flatter me. Qin Feiyong shook his head and looked at the man in purple. He smiled and said, Senior, you must be the Grand Hall Master. Yes, I am. The man in purple looked at Qin Feiyong curiously and asked, Can you tell me why you don't want to become a disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall? Qin Feiyong said, I don't want trouble. The man in purple asked, If that's the case, why did you join the Dan Hall? Qin Feiyong sighed, I had no choice. I know about this. This kid offended all the big shots in Black Bear City. He's basically at the point where the whole world is his enemy. Luo Xiong had always wanted him to join the Pill Hall. Hence, he extended his hand and said that he had already joined the Pill Hall. This brat is smart. He took the opportunity to admit his identity as a disciple of the Pill Hall. Elder Wan joked. The purple-clothed man's face twitched. He was so young and already knew how to cause trouble. What would happen when he grew up? He was afraid that the sky would be turned upside down. Qin Feiyong was rather embarrassed. The purple-robed man's face turned serious. He put down the teacup and said, All right, sit down. Let's talk business. How do we cooperate? Qin Feiyong nodded and sat opposite the purple-robed man. He organized his thoughts and said, You provide the pill recipe and herbs, and I will help you refine them. We will each get half of the refined pills. The pill formula and herbs are all provided by us. You only need to refine it once, and you want a 50-50 split? Isn't your appetite a little too big? The purple-robed man frowned. Qin Feiyong said, Is it big? I don't think so. After all, what I refined is a supreme-grade pill. I know it's a supreme-grade pill, but it's not a good deal. Because the Marshall Imperial Hall doesn't have the pill formula. We have to think of a way to find it. We will definitely have to pay a high price to find these pill formulas. Moreover, we need money to buy the herbs. The most important thing is, without my help, you won't be able to control the nether devil flame. And you want to take half of it without doing anything. Do you think it's realistic? The purple-robed man asked. Qin Feiyong frowned. The purple-robed man said, If you insist on a 50-50 split, then I'll leave the pill formula to you. Our Marshall Imperial Hall will only provide the ingredients and ensure your safety. If you agree, I'll send a 9-star battle king to protect you. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. Now, he was most afraid of the Danwang Hall's revenge. Moreover, he had to be wary of Lin Han. It would be much safer to have an expert by his side at all times. But the problem was that the various pill formulas were basically controlled by the Danwang Hall. There were very few that were circulated outside. Where would he find them? All right, I agree. In the end, Qin Feiyong nodded. As for the pill formula, he couldn't rush it. He would think of a way later. Young man, you should be more straightforward. The purple-robed man smiled and said, Take out the nether devil flame. Qin Feiyong didn't move at all. With just a thought, the nether devil flame shot out from between his eyebrows. The three of them looked at each other with a trace of suspicion in their eyes. The purple-robed man stretched out his hand, and another devil flame fell in front of him. It was suspended in the void. The pitch-black flames moved, giving off a very strange feeling. The beautiful woman said in a deep voice, It's really the nether devil flame. Elder Wan sighed and said, For the past 8 years, we all thought that Zuo'an was dead. Who would have thought that not only was he not dead, but he has also stepped into the 8-star combat emperor. When he makes a comeback, the county of Yan will be filled with blood. He is improving, but so are we. We didn't kill him 8 years ago, but the next time he appears, we will definitely send him to hell. The purple-robed man smiled coldly. Battle, Qi gushed out from his palm and turned into a raging wave that rushed towards the nether devil flame. At the same time, the beautiful woman waved her hand and a battle Qi boundary formed in an instant, enveloping Qin Feiyong inside. At the same time, in a cave, Zuo'an and Lin Qin were refining the blood spirit pill with their eyes closed. Puff! Suddenly, Zuo'an spat out a mouthful of blood. His old eyes suddenly opened, and 2 terrifying rays of cold light burst out from his eyes. Lin Qin opened his eyes, suspiciously. When he saw Zuo'an's condition, his expression changed, and he asked, Master, what happened? Zuo'an said, Someone erased the blood contract with the nether devil flame. Who? Lin Qin was surprised. Zuo'an sneered and said, Who else can it be? It must be the 4 old dogs of King Yan. In the entire Yan County, only they have the ability to do so. Lin Qin frowned and said, In other words, Jiang Haotian has gone to Yan City? Yan City, hee, I will find you. Zuo'an laughed sinisterly, closed his eyes, and continued to cultivate. Conference hall. At this moment, it was like a big furnace, filled with a shocking heat wave. If it wasn't for the protection of the battle Qi boundary, Qin Feiyong would have been burned to ashes. The reason was that once the blood contract was erased, the nether devil flame would be an ownerless object and would immediately release high temperature. The purple-robed man waved his sleeve, and a majestic battle Qi rushed towards the nether devil flame. After a while, that terrifyingly high temperature was actually suppressed by him, Then, he turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, "The alchemy fire needs a lot of blood to recognize its master. Are you ready?" Qin Feiyang nodded and left the battle chi boundary, walking in front of the nether devil flame. The purple-robed man waved his hand and a wave of battle chi flew over. Suddenly, a wound appeared on his wrist. Fresh blood spurted out. Qin Feiyang hurriedly raised his arm and placed it on the nether devil flame. Blood flowed continuously into the nether devil flame. Gradually, the originally pitch-black nether devil flame gradually turned blood-red. In the end, it looked as if it had been soaked in blood and looked extremely demonic. Qin Feiyang had lost half of the blood in his body and he began to feel dizzy. Buzz! Finally, the nether devil flame trembled in the void and the blood-red color quickly faded, turning pitch-black again. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also felt that blood was thicker than water. He felt that the nether devil flame was already a part of his body. The purple-robed man lowered his arm and smiled. "The blood contract has been formed. You are now its master." Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. He bandaged the wound on his wrist and raised his head to look at the nether devil flame with an excited expression. A blood contract was equivalent to a contract. Any treasure that was bound by blood would have a blood contract hidden within the treasure's body. Only when the blood contract was formed could the treasure be controlled at will. If the treasure had an owner, the blood contract would have to be erased before it could be bound by blood again. But to erase a blood contract, not just anyone could do it. The cultivation level had to be at least the same as the original owner. Qin Feiyang originally planned to erase the blood contract with the nether devil flame and bind it with his blood when his cultivation level caught up with Zhuo An's. He never thought that the martial imperial palace would help him. However, the purple-robed man's strength had really shocked him. Being able to erase Zhuo An's blood contract was enough to prove that this man was an 8-star combat emperor. The purple-robed man said, "The matter has been settled. I should go and cultivate. You three can discuss the rest." The three of them nodded. After the purple-robed man left, Elder One said with a smile, "Jiang Haotian, don't be too happy. Now that the nether devil flame has recognized its master, when are you going to start refining pills?" Qin Feiyang's mind moved and the nether devil flame entered the ancient castle again. He asked, "What kind of pills do you want me to refine?" "What kind of pills can you refine?" the beautiful woman asked. Qin Feiyang said, "Healing pill, bone replenishing pill, body tempering pill, qi gathering pill." "Why are they all low-level pills?" the beautiful woman frowned. Qin Feiyang was stunned. This was too much of a blow to him. Elder One shook his head and laughed. He said to the beautiful woman, "Don't forget, he has just started refining pills. It's already very rare for him to be able to refine 4 kinds of pills." The beautiful woman curled her lips in disdain. "Looks like I have to use a big move." Qin Feiyang muttered secretly and said with a smile, "Senior, I can refine the red fire-colored glass pill. Do you have the materials?" "Really?" The two of them were surprised. "Of course." Qin Feiyang nodded. The two of them looked at each other. The red fire-colored glass pill was such a rare pill. He also knew how to refine it? "Kid, did you steal the pill recipe?" Elder One asked in a low voice. "Steal?" Qin Feiyang's face twitched. Did he look like such a person? He coughed dryly and said, "Don't worry about that. As long as you have the medicinal materials, I will refine it for you. But according to the agreement, we will split it 50-50. If the Martial Imperial Hall really had medicinal materials, then he would make a big profit this time." The beautiful woman said, "First, make a list of the medicinal materials and let us take a look." Elder One immediately went to get a brush and ink. Moreover, he personally ground the ink. Qin Feiyang held the brush and quickly wrote down the names of various medicinal materials on a piece of blank paper. After making the list, The beautiful woman and elder one each held it in their hands and looked at it carefully. Qin Feiyang asked, "How is it? Do you have it?" Elder one put down the list and laughed. "Of course, and we can prepare 6 sets of materials." So many. Qin Feiyang was wild with joy, because once he refined it, he would get 3 red fire colored glass pills. Chapter 132. However, while Qin Feiyang was happy, he found that the beautiful woman and elder one were looking at him with a thoughtful look. He touched his nose and asked in confusion, "Why are you looking at me like that?" The beautiful woman said, "Why do I feel like I've been tricked by you?" Elder one nodded. "Trap." Qin Feiyang was stunned and said innocently, "Did I?" The beautiful woman said, "If we go to the Danwang Hall and ask them to help us refine these 6 scarlet fire colored glass Dan, we will at most give them 1 scarlet fire colored glass Dan as a reward. But you want 3 here. Don't tell me you didn't cheat us." Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed a few times and said seriously, "I am refining the best quality pill." Elder one rolled his eyes and said, "So what if it's the best quality pill? It can only increase a small realm." Ugh. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said, "The best quality pill can't be measured by price if you have to calculate it like this. Then I can't help it." The two looked at each other, as if reaching some kind of agreement, and nodded at the same time. About the scarlet fire colored glass Dan, let's think about it again. If you have nothing to do, you can walk around, or you can go find Ling, and Yun Fei to talk about old times. We still have something to do, so we'll leave first. I'll call someone to take you to your residence later," Elder one said very tactfully. Then the 2 of them got up and hurried outside. Qin Feiyang hurriedly got up and shouted, "Hey, hey, hey! Don't be like this. At most, I'll take 1 less." The 2 of them ignored him and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. "At any rate, it's the War Emperor. Can you not be stingy?" Qin Feiyang despised. The duck in his mouth flew away, just like that, and he was very unhappy. Returning to the chair, he took out the nether devil flame, and with a slight thought, the black flame rose 1/2 a meter high, and a terrifying temperature quickly spread out. But he himself couldn't feel the slightest bit of heat. Qin Feiyang was amazed. It was just that he didn't know what level of pill fire this nether devil flame was. There were strong and weak alchemy fires too. Without a doubt, the pill fire of the Iron Bull Town's pill hall was of the lowest grade. The pill fire of Black Bear City's pill hall should be of a higher grade. Suddenly, he smelled something burning. He looked around suspiciously, and his expression changed. It turned out that the temperature in the conference hall was too high. The tables, chairs, coffee tables, windows, and everything made of wood in the conference hall were all burnt. The fabric was already burning. He hurriedly put away the netherworld devil flame and grabbed the teapot to extinguish the fire. However, the fire was ferocious, and in a few blinks of an eye, the wood was also on fire. More importantly, there was only a little bit of water in the teapot. It was not enough to put out the fire. "We're done for." Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He had just arrived at the Marshal King Hall, yet he had already burned down the meeting hall. Elder Wan and the beautiful woman would definitely go crazy from anger. The fire was getting more and more terrifying. He hurriedly ran out of the main hall and shouted, "There's a fire! Quickly come and put out the fire!" What? How did it catch fire? When the nearby disciples heard the roar, they immediately ran over. What happened? At this time, a burly man walked over with large strides. When he saw the hall that had turned into a sea of fire, his eyes immediately widened. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly, pretended to be confused, and said, "Yeah, what's going on?" The burly man was startled and asked, "Haven't you been here the whole time?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Yes, but I really don't know what's going on, but it suddenly caught fire." "Is that so?" The burly man looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang felt a little uncomfortable and quickly changed the topic. Did Elder One call you here? The burly man said, Yes, Elder One asked me to protect you. He also specially instructed me to not leave you by even a single step. Qin Feiyang said, In other words, you are the 9-star War King. The burly man nodded. Qin Feiyang said, Let's go, bring me to the treasure pavilion first. Shouldn't we put out the fire first? The burly man said. Qin Feiyang looked to both sides, and dozens of disciples were running over quickly. He said, I have urgent matters to attend to. They will put out the fire. Don't worry, let's go. Then he hurriedly slipped away. Hurry up and put out the fire. The burly man glanced at Qin Feiyang and then at the hall and said to the disciples who were running over, and then chased after Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang ran hundreds of meters in one breath. The burly man was puzzled. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Before Qin Feiyang could answer, an angry roar came from the conference hall. Jiang Haoyan, you are a jinx. It was Elder Wan's voice. Jinx? The burly man was stunned and seemed to understand a little. He looked at Qin Feiyang strangely and said, You didn't set the fire, did you? Qin Feiyang's face turned serious, and he said unhappily, How could I do such a thing? Then why did Elder One scold you? The burly man was puzzled. Maybe I'm an eyesore. Don't talk nonsense. Quickly take me to the treasure pavilion, Qin Feiyang urged. The fire in the conference hall must have something to do with this kid. The burly man muttered and then grabbed Qin Feiyang and rushed to the west side of the city. Even with the speed of a 9-star battle king, it still took them half an hour to reach the treasure pavilion. It's Jiang Haoyan. He actually dares to come out alone. No, the one beside him is the Martial Imperial Hall's managing elder. I remember his name is Shi Zheng, a 9-star battle king. He actually has a 9-star battle king protecting him. The Martial Imperial Hall really thinks highly of him. As soon as Qin Feiyang entered the treasure pavilion, the people inside whispered to each other. However, Qin Feiyang ignored them all. A staff member went up to him and asked, Young Master Jiang, what do you want to buy? Qin Feiyang said, Take me to the auction house. Shi Zheng added, I want a VIP room. Okay, please follow me. The staff member turned around and led the two of them straight to the second floor, arriving at the door of a VIP room. Qin Feiyang was about to enter. Wait. Shi Zheng reached out to stop him and said in a low voice, I'll go in and take a look first. Before Qin Feiyang could react, he pushed the door open and entered. After carefully inspecting the VIP room, he led Qin Feiyang in. The staff member said, Young Master Jiang, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. After the staff member left, Qin Feiyang glanced at the VIP room. The decoration was not luxurious, but it was not ordinary either. 2 armchairs were neatly placed in the center, and it was obvious that they had been carefully carved. In front of the chairs, there was a transparent floor-to-ceiling window, and he could clearly see the situation outside. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down. Below was the auction house. It was very big, enough to accommodate thousands of people, and now there were about 300 to 400 people. There was a high platform in the center, and a white-haired old man was standing on the platform, presiding over the auction. The item being auctioned now was a dagger, and many people were bidding. Qin Feiyang looked carefully for a while and lost interest. The quality of the dagger was not bad, but compared to Chang Shui, it was worlds apart. He turned around and sat on the chair, looking at Shi Zheng, who was standing beside him. Shi Zheng scanned the auction house, his face full of vigilance. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, Elder, relax. Even if someone wants to deal with me, it won't be so fast. Don't be careless. Shi Zheng shook his head. This person is quite dutiful. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. The auction was in full swing. One item after another was constantly being auctioned, but none of them were what Qin Feiyang wanted. Just as he lost patience and was about to get up and leave, the white-haired old man on the high platform took out an exquisite jade box and said with a smile, "The next item to be auctioned is very precious. Everyone, open your eyes and look carefully." Precious? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He returned to his seat and fixed his eyes on it. The old man in white opened the jade box and took out a medicinal herb. The medicinal herb was as thick as a baby's arm and as long as a chopstick. It was fiery red, as if it was condensed by flames, and its shape was almost exactly the same as a ginseng. Fire ginseng. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled, and he immediately became spirited. In fact, he came to the treasure pavilion to see if there was a pill furnace, but he did not expect to encounter a fire ginseng. The appearance of the fire ginseng caused the entire auction house to boil. The white-haired old man said with a smile, "I don't need to introduce this treasure. The starting price is 300 gold coins, and there is no upper limit. Begin. 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000. The price soared up with a whoosh. 10 breaths later, the price of the fire ginseng had risen to 5,000. This price was already too much for many people to bear, and they could only watch as others increased the price. After a while, the price soared to 20,000, and only a few people were still competing. "I, Shuiyang, am taking this fire ginseng. 30,000. An extremely arrogant voice came from one of the VIP rooms. As if they were afraid of this person, no one bid any more. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "Elder Shi, who is Shuiyang?" Shi Zheng said, "He is a core disciple of the Danwang Hall. His talent in alchemy is ranked in the top 10 among all the disciples, and his future is limitless. Moreover, he has a very good relationship with the first prince of the royal family, so many people will be respectful when they meet him." Danwang Hall. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes as he said indifferently, I bid 40,000. This voice sounds like Zhang Haoyan's. That guy is a lawless person. Others are afraid of Shuiyang, but he definitely isn't. In addition, he has a deep grudge with the Danwang Hall, so he will definitely fight with Shuiyang to the end. This is going to be a good show. After hearing Qin Feiyang's voice, the others crossed their arms and looked at the 2 VIP rooms playfully. There was a moment of silence. Shuiyang's voice came. "Zhang Haoyan, you'd better do your best. 50,000. There was a threatening tone in his voice. Qin Feiyang sneered. "Who do you think you are?" 100,000. Raising the price by 50,000 in one go. This guy is really rich. Everyone was dumbfounded. Shuiyang was so angry that he laughed. "Good, very good. I will play with you today. I want to see how many gold coins you have on you. 200,000. Chapter 133. It's not much, but it's enough to trample on you. 300,000. Qin Feiyang said in disdain. "Trample on me? Do you have the ability to do so?" "For 100,000. Shuiyang shouted angrily. Shi Zheng was shocked and hurriedly said, "Zhang Haotian for 100,000 is far more than the value of the fire ginseng. You can't act on impulse and be a fool." "Don't worry, I'm very calm now. I haven't lost my mind." Qin Feiyang waved his hand at Shi Zheng and sneered, "Shuiyang, right? I'm not even afraid of Jia He. So why would I not be afraid of a little tramp like you?" 500,000. Shuiyang flew into a rage and roared, "You dare to call me a little tramp? Today I'll fight you to the death." 600,000. Qin Feiyang said 700,000. Shuiyang said 800,000. Qin Feiyang said 900,000. Shuiyang said 1,000,000. A stalk of fire ginseng was sold for a sky-high price of 1,000,000. The two of them were too crazy. Even if they were rich, they couldn't squander money like this, right? The most excited one was the white-haired old man on the stage. Although the fire ginseng was rare, it was usually sold for between 100,000 and 200,000. 1 million, and this was the first time in history. Shi Zhang was also dumbfounded. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "My young master Jiang, you really can't continue. If you really need the fire ginseng, I'll talk to Eldoan and ask him to sell it to you at the market price." "Is he willing to?" Qin Feiyang said in disdain. This, Shi Zhang hesitated. The fire ginseng wasn't a cabbage that could be found everywhere. Even the Martial Imperial Hall only had a few stalks. "Continue, why? Are you done with your temper?" Shui Yang's arrogant laughter came from the VIP room opposite. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "I'd like to see how big your temper is. 1,100,000. He's still increasing the price. Everyone went crazy. 1,200,000. Shui Yang said without hesitation. Qin Feiyang's lips curled up slightly and said in a mocking tone, "Since you want it so much, I'll be generous for once and let you have it." Everyone was stunned. They all thought that Qin Feiyang would continue to raise the price, but he actually gave up. "Ha ha!" Shui Yang laughed loudly and said, "Don't pretend if you don't have the ability." Qin Feiyang said playfully, "You still haven't reacted? Is your brain filled with shit? Would I tell you that I don't have any gold coins?" "What? No gold coins?" Hearing this, everyone was stunned, their faces twitching. "If you don't have any gold coins, how can you increase it by hundreds of thousands? What if Shui Yang doesn't follow you? How are you going to settle the bill?" This guy was too much of a bastard. That brat Shui Yang was too stupid. Not only did he not have the slightest bit of self-awareness, he was even complacent, thinking that he was so great. In reality, he was being taken for a fool. There was no sound coming from the VIP room. Shui Yang was infuriated. Qin Feiyang praised, "You actually used one. 2 million to buy a fire ginseng. You're really generous. I admire you from the bottom of my heart. Why don't we become friends?" These words, this was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire. "I'm going to kill you." Shui Yang roared, bristling with anger. "This is the treasure pavilion. Who dares to act rashly?" The white-haired old man on the stage shouted. Qin Feiyang said, "Yes, this is the treasure pavilion. Do you think this is the Danwang Hall, where you can do whatever you want?" Shui Yang suppressed the anger in his heart and gritted his teeth. "Jiang Haotian, we've formed a grudge. Let's see how long you can be arrogant." Qin Feiyang said lightly, "It's not that I'm arrogant, it's that you're too stupid. I don't understand why the Danwang Hall would let a pig like you out to embarrass themselves." Crack! In the VIP room opposite, the sound of a chair breaking could be heard immediately. Cough, cough! The old man in white on the stage coughed and held back his laughter. He said solemnly, "I now announce that the final winner of the fire ginseng is Shui Yang. Everyone, please give him a warm round of applause." Clap! A loud round of applause suddenly sounded. However, in Shui Yang's ears, this was a great irony. He felt that everyone was laughing at him and treating him as an idiot. Uft! The sound of the slaps was like a slap to his face. It made him so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Qin Feiyang sneered. With such a low IQ, he wanted to fight with him. He was really looking for trouble. Next, the old man in white took out another auction item. The auction continued. Qin Feiyang didn't look at it anymore. He got up and walked out of the VIP room. Shi Zhang hurriedly followed and asked, "Where are you going now?" Qin Feiyang said, "I want to see the manager of the treasure pavilion." Shi Zhang said, "The manager of the treasure pavilion is the white-haired old man on the stage. His surname is Li. Everyone calls him Manager Li. Just wait here. I'll arrange it for you." "Thank you." Qin Feiyong smiled. Shi Zheng nodded and quickly left. Qin Feiyong returned to the VIP room. Not long later, a woman in red walked into the auction house. She whispered a few words into the white-haired old man's ear. The white-haired old man glanced at the VIP room where Qin Feiyong was. After saying a few words to the woman in red, he left the auction house in large strides. Soon, a series of footsteps could be heard. Shi Zheng and the white-haired old man entered the VIP room one after another. Qin Feiyong got up and greeted him. "Greetings, Manager Li." The white-haired old man waved his hand. "Don't be polite, don't be polite. I should be the one thanking you. After all, it was you who made my treasure pavilion earn a lot." Qin Feiyong smiled. "I'm proud, and you're the one who benefits. It's a win-win situation." Yes, yes, yes. The white-haired old man nodded and asked with a smile, "Little brother, why did you call me here?" Qin Feiyong said, "I want to ask, does the treasure pavilion have a pill furnace?" Pill furnace? The white-haired old man was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. He smiled and said, "There must be a pill furnace, and I can make the decision to give you a good one. However, there is a condition." Qin Feiyong said, "Tell me about it." The white-haired old man said, "My treasure pavilion will provide the herbs. You help me refine 500 top-grade healing pills and 500 top-grade bone replenishing pills." Shi Zheng frowned. Wasn't this clearly stealing his business? Qin Feiyong's eyes narrowed slightly as he smiled. The mind of a businessman is indeed different. "However, I have to see first if the pill furnace you gave me is worth 1,000 peak-grade medicinal pills." The white-haired old man smiled. "Sure, I'll go get it now." Qin Feiyong hurriedly said, "Wait a minute, there's one more thing. I wonder if the treasure pavilion has any fire ginseng. I need 3. The white-haired old man hesitated. Qin Feiyong said, "I'm not asking for it for free. I'll buy it from you at the usual auction price." The white-haired old man waved his hand. "You've misunderstood. That's not what I meant. I'm just wondering if you know how to refine the scarlet fire-colored glass pellets?" Qin Feiyong nodded. The white-haired old man's eyes lit up and he smiled. "How about this? I won't ask for the healing pills and bone replenishing pills. If you refine 10 scarlet fire-colored glass pellets for us, not only will I give you the pill furnace, but I'll also give you 3 fire ginseng. What do you think?" 10. Qin Feiyong was shocked. The precious treasure pavilion was indeed worthy of being the largest trading place in the great Qin Empire. Since he couldn't get anything from the Martial King Hall, he should at least get something from the treasure pavilion. He shook his head. This isn't a good deal. Apart from the pill furnace and fire ginseng, I also want 3 scarlet fire-colored glass pellets as payment. 3? The white-haired old man's face twitched as he said in disdain, "Little brother, you should come to the treasure pavilion because you're too cunning." Shi Zheng couldn't help but laugh. Qin Feiyong was a little embarrassed as he said again, "I'm only refining peak-grade pellets." "So what? Isn't the effect the same?" "I don't believe that I can break through 2 stages in one go." "Forget it. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Let's stick to our agreement. 500 healing pills and 500 bone replenishing pills, and I'll give you the pill furnace. As for the 3 fire ginseng, how about 150,000 gold each?" The white-haired old man said. Qin Feiyong said helplessly, "Sure, but I only have 200,000 gold right now. Are you trying to get something for nothing?" The white-haired old man was helpless. Qin Feiyong felt even more embarrassed. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. "Fine, give it to me when you have money. You're an alchemist anyway. I'm not afraid that you can't pay me back." The white-haired old man sighed as he turned and walked out of the VIP room. Qin Feiyong turned his head to look at Shi Zheng and said, Tell me honestly, is my reward really that high? This, indeed, Shi Zheng stammered, as if he found it hard to speak. Forget it, don't say it. Qin Feiyang returned to the chair weakly. He felt very hurt. It seemed that he had to lower the standard. After a while, his eyes flashed coldly as he asked, Elder Shi, what's Shui Yang's cultivation? Shi Zheng thought for a while and said, It's said that he's a 3-star martial ancestor. So strong? Qin Feiyang frowned. At this time, the white-haired old man pushed the door open and entered. Qin Feiyang stood up to welcome him. The white-haired old man waved his hand, and 3 fire ginseng and a pill furnace appeared on the ground. Qin Feiyang squatted on the ground and looked carefully. After confirming that it was the fire ginseng, he looked at the pill furnace. The pill furnace was as big as a face and was completely black. There were some unknown patterns engraved on it. From the surface, the quality was indeed not bad. It was even better than the pill furnace that Luo Xiong used. But it was more than 1,000 supreme-grade pills. He stood up and looked at the white-haired old man. He shook his head and said, Manager Li, you really know how to do business. For this pill furnace, I can at most give you 200 supreme-grade pills. So little? Manager Li raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang said unhappily, You really think that supreme-grade pills are made of mud? This is already a lot. If you agree, we'll make a deal. Otherwise, I'll leave immediately. Manager Li frowned. As a businessman, the first thing to consider was whether or not he would lose money. No matter how bad this pill furnace was, it was still worth a few 100,000 gold coins. 200 supreme-grade pills, was it worth this price? Everyone had heard of supreme-grade pills, but there were very few people who had actually seen it. Therefore, it was difficult for him to make a decision. It seems that this trip was in vain. Elder Shi, let's go. I'll treat you to a few drinks. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.